Okay, we should be live.
Okay, so we should go ahead and start this meeting and welcome everyone to our endorsement process for the San Francisco Democratic Party. We're excited to be here today and also very thankful to everyone who's here participating in the interviews of candidates. Today, we're going to be interviewing the public defender and assessor candidates, as well as Board of Supervisors in districts 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. And just so everyone is aware in terms of the process, we are going to allow the public defender and the assessor recorder candidates to have 2 minutes for an introduction, 5 minutes for questions, and 1 minute for closing statements. And then just so everyone also can be, and this will be repeated as we go through our process. The Board of Supervisors candidates will have 2 minutes for an introduction, 7 minutes for questions, and 1 minute for closing statements. Just wanted to make sure that everyone is aware of how the day is going to be running today. With that, I also want to introduce myself. I am Annabelle Ibanez. I am one of the co-chairs for the endorsement committee. And with me is my other co-chair, Gloria, member Barry. And I also want to thank our executive director, Moises Garcia, for helping us with all the logistical stuff that it entails for us to have a successful endorsement process today. With that, we're going to be starting with the public defender candidates, and we are going to call Mano Raju to be our first candidate. And if Manu, if you can tell us, give us a 2-minute introduction in terms of why you're running and why you're seeking for our endorsement. And you have 2 minutes, and I will be, Moises, will you be able to help us with timekeeping?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. So Moises is going to let you know when your time is up. Thank you.
Shall I begin?
Yes, please.
Thank you so much, Annabelle. It's my honor to be here seeking the sole endorsement of the DCCC of San Francisco. To understand why I'm seeking that, you have to understand that I am obsessed with providing our clients with the best possible representation they can get. I was recruited to the San Francisco Public Defender's Office from Contra Costa County due to my record as a line deputy there. I practiced as a line deputy for a number of years in San Francisco, and because of my results in the courtroom, Jeff Adachi promoted me to be the director of training. Because of my work as the director of training, mentoring, and training while continuing to try cases, he promoted me to be the felony manager. When he passed away tragically, many people in the office wrote letters to the mayor to appoint me as the public defender. It's an honor to continue to be the elected public defender of San Francisco. As I said before, I'm obsessed with, and we've done many things to increase both the structures and practices of actual courtroom defense to make sure we perform at the highest level, and we have the results to back that up. Because our clients deserve the best, I brought in Listlin Lacoste from our Be Magic program, one of the most respected leaders in the city, to be my chief of staff, and I'm happy to say that we had the biggest budget win this year in the history of the Public Defender's Office, after having another big budget win last year, which prior to this year was the biggest win that we've had, which is going to enable us to reinforce our line and our core work with more attorneys, paralegals, social workers, and investigators. Because our clients deserve the best, I was able to bring and recruit Angela Chan from the Asian Law Caucus, who has done, because of her work on for immigrants who are being detained, has been responsible for thousands of people in California not being deported because they're not allowed to be arrested by ICE. That is the kind of work that I want our office to do, because our clients deserve the best.
That's time.
That was time?
Okay.
Yes, and now we're gonna open it up from questions from members of the DCCC. And for this, we will have 5 minutes. So we're opening up to the members, and if you can raise your hand if you have any questions to ask candidate Raju. I see Member Barry, sorry.
Thank you, Carrie Bonas. Thank you, Mr. Raju, for coming to this interview today. My question is, what programs have you developed since you've been the public defender?
Thank you for that question. We've developed the Be the Jury program, which is the first of its kind in the country. When I approached the treasurer, which now pays jurors who would otherwise financially hardship off jurors, it pays them $100 a day, which is thereby going to increase economic and racial diversity on jurors. I reached out to City Hall and got funding for an integrity unit, by which we were able to develop the first public police misconduct database in the country. We have gotten funding for a Break the Cycle initiative, which is going to have on-the-ground case managers to meet people when they first went to the jail or in the arraignment courtrooms to immediately start connecting people with services. We started a film initiative with 2 film production companies in order to tell the narrative stories of our clients, which is going to allow policies to follow that. We've moved into the class action realm where our immigration unit sued ICE in order to get people out of the horrendous conditions of ICE detention. We've been active in Sacramento in changing the law so we have shorter probation terms on some cases, so people aren't necessarily extended on probation for too long, and they can move on with their life. We've expanded our Clean Slate program threefold by reaching out to foundations and dramatically increased the number of people who have gotten through Clean Slate and now can move on with their lives. Those are just some of them, but I'm very happy to say that even with the pandemic, we've had many things that I think are the first in the country and are leaders, and I've received calls from throughout the country from other public defenders applauding those accomplishments.
Anyone else has any other questions? Okay. If no one else has any questions, then we're going to ask candidate Raju if you could basically do a closing statement.
Yes, thank you. Becoming the public defender and then immediately going into a pandemic has been very challenging circumstances for being a public defender with only 20% of the office there. Having said that, I'm extremely pleased with where we're at. We've had some budget wins that are going to really enable us to upskill and take things to the next level, including bringing in a data person, bringing in higher level communications, and finally getting closer to parity with the other justice partners, such as the district attorney and the sheriff's department. But having said that, I'm always going to go back to increasing the core representation, making sure we have the individuals and the training to make sure that every individual gets the best possible representation. And I want people knowing that if they come to our office, they're going to get better representation than they would have if they had money to pay for an attorney. And also, we've increased growth within every category of the ranks in our office, more growth opportunities for investigators, paralegals, social workers, and attorneys, and moved into the policy realm. And I'm really thrilled with where we are. And we have the best public defender's office in the country, but I have a growth mindset, and I'm going to keep on trying to get better every month, every year.
Well, thank you so much for being here with us this morning. And just so everyone and yourself know is that at our next meeting on Wednesday, July 27th, we will be voting on who we will be endorsing. So thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.
So the next person that we are going to be interviewing and who's also running for public defender is Rebecca Young. Is she with us, Moises?
Yes, I just promoted her to a panelist.
Perfect. Hi, Rebecca.
Good morning.
Good morning, Ms. Young. Thank you for joining us today. And I'm going to repeat just so we know, so you can hear what I said earlier in terms of how the interview process is going to be going. So you have 2 minutes to make a statement as to, why, it's an introduction, personal statement, why you're running. And then you're going to have 5 minutes for questions and answers. And then at the end, you're going to have 1 minute for a closing statement. So, and Moises, our executive director, Garcia, is going to time you, and he's going to let you know when time is up. So with that, we're going to go ahead and start. And if you can please tell us, give us an introduction of who you are and why you're running.
Okay, well, good morning and thank you for the interview. I am running for public defender to restore transparency and integrity to the office and to bring the focus back to the office's core mission of vigorous and compassionate client-centered representation. Currently at PDO, there are no minimum standards for how someone becomes a manager or a chief. Based on recent elevations, it is apparent that one needn't ever have been a public defender, one needn't ever have carried a felony caseload or done a jury trial. Despite these women, and Minot was able to mention 2 of them, these women's other qualifications, these elevations have communicated 2 things to the entire staff. 1, to be eligible for promotion, to advance yourself professionally, your experience does not matter. Your decades of hard work on behalf of the office does not matter. Your decades of contribution to the community, your hard work in maintaining the other programs that the office does, all of this doesn't matter. Your trial work, none of it matters. Okay, what matters is whether or not you're a friend of the public defender. And as a result of this, the office has become completely demoralized. What is not seen, what is not heard, is what is happening inside that office. And even though I am not currently in the office anymore, I am aware of what is happening in the office. The office has become management top heavy, going from 12 managers to 19 in approximately 3 years. And as a result, caseloads are staggering, and this cannot just be blamed on the pandemic. Currently, felony caseloads are in the range of 75 to over 100 cases per felony attorney. I managed the felony unit for 6 years under Jeff Adachi. He also elevated me. Okay.
Thank you so much. We're going to go ahead. If you want to just finish your last sentence, I think it's okay. And then just quickly, if you can. If not, we would go and start and open up for questions. It'll be good if you can finish it.
I will. I was a public defender for 19 years, and for 6 years, Jeff Adachi mentored and trained me to be his felony manager. And that's how people should become managers, is with training and mentorship, not plucked out of the universe and plopped in and said, it doesn't matter that you've never worked here before and you've never done a trial. You're going to earn top chief salary.
Okay. So thank you so much. So we're not going to open it up for questions. Any members, if you can please raise your hand. I see actually Co-Chair Barry. Co-Chair Barry, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Co-Chair Ibanez. Ms. Young, your introduction spoke a lot about promotions in the Department of the Public Defender Office. Were you up for any promotion and did not get it? Or what is the situation of why this seems to really be a thing for you?
Okay, fair question. I was not in the office when these promotions were made. I was not currently in the office. There are a lot of problems with the promotions that are not able to be explained in 2 minutes. But one is that the people promoted, and it's not the only issue, the major issue is morale and caseloads and top-heavy management structure. Currently, there are 31 attorneys picking up felony cases. When I was felony manager, there were 36 attorneys picking up felony cases, the new arraignments. And I constantly pushed Jeff Adachi to get us to 40, because I knew that if we could get to 40 felony trial attorneys picking up the new arraignments, that we would reduce caseloads to about 50 cases per attorney, just doing the math. Plus, I struggled all the time and worked all the time to keep caseloads balanced, particularly with respect to serious felony cases and murder cases. Right now, people who have done one felony trial in their entire life and have been a felony attorney for maybe a year or 18 months are handling murder cases. I have received reports, and I will not say who they are from. They're not from people inside the office, but that this person, and have no business handling a murder case. And I fear for the clients of the public defender's office. The women who have been elevated are spectacular women. I'm not saying anything against these women in their own right. But when you take someone who has never been a public defender, and for the very first time, you're creating a chief attorney position for a woman, and you give it to someone who has never been a public defender, has never tried a case, has never carried a felony caseload, you are inherently infecting enormous resentment throughout your staff over this kind of promotion. And most people are saying, who does that? And so everyone is pushed to be the best that they can be, all right? But some people strive and strive and strive because they want to advance their careers as well. They try case after case after case. They volunteer for community events. Personally, what I did was I co-chaired the Racial Justice Committee for 6 years, and I co-chaired Public Defenders for Racial Justice for 7 years. When Jeff asked me to be on Mayor Lee's body-worn camera working group, I went, even though it meant extra hours. When he asked me to sit on the San Francisco Police Department biased policing group, I went. So I am equally qualified, and in fact, I think I am more qualified in the leadership arena than Mr. Raju, who I greatly admire and respect. In spite of what's going on in the office, I still admire and respect him. I consider him a brilliant trial attorney, but the leadership is failing. And the failing leadership is reverberating throughout the office. It's not just the lawyers who are coming to me. It's the paralegals, okay? It's the investigators. People are enormously unhappy. There is a level of remoteness. Mr. Raju is a brilliant trial attorney, and he's a really nice person, and everybody likes him. That doesn't mean you're going to be a good leader. He would be brilliant as the chief of the trial division. Currently, the person who has been made chief of the trial division is a person who hasn't done a jury trial in 37 years.
Ms. Young, I'm going to ask if you can wrap this question because time is moving fast.
Oh,
and I want to make sure that other panelists or other members actually do have answer your questions. And I want to be respectful of that, and I want to be respectful of the time. So,
yeah.
And
I'm a lawyer, so I just tend to talk a lot because I'm a lawyer. So thank you for checking me.
So I am going to call Member Tung. She has a question.
Sure.
Thank you very much. Good, is it morning still? Good morning, Ms. Young. It's nice to see you.
Good morning, Ms. Tung. How are you?
Very good, thank you.
Nice to see you too.
I first want to say that I have always been very impressed with the level of representation that the Public Defender's Office provides people in San Francisco. It has been an office that commands great respect, and I appreciate your work as a trial attorney there, and also Mr. Raju's work as a trial attorney there. I would say that I am concerned about the issues around the management. Sorry, that's my baby that's crying. And so I appreciate you kind of illuminating these issues to the members of the DCCC. How would you change management, the management structure or the office in a way that is going to raise the morale of the people who work there, who toil tirelessly for their clients and advocate for their clients? And how would that be different from what Mr. Raju has done?
Okay, the first thing I would do is I would reduce the number of managers. Currently, there are what they call leads. There are 4 felony leads for a total of 31 attorneys. So that means there's less than 8 attorneys per lead. When I co-managed the felony unit with another experienced trial attorney, I was co-managing 52 attorneys. We're talking about professional people who have been highly educated and who are in the felony trial unit, which means that they've shown that they can do a trial, at least at the misdemeanor level, okay? And then they've been promoted to felonies. I would make sure that we have at least 36 attorneys picking up felony cases. I would institute rigorous training programs so that, and I would also institute minimum standards. Before you get a murder case, you have to have tried 5 felony cases. That was Jeff's rule. That's minimum. People who have done 1 felony trial are being given murder cases. So I would institute minimum standards for becoming a manager, for becoming a felony lead. And now that there aren't chief positions, this is another element which I feel is a lack of transparency that's going on. These women who were elevated they're not receiving chief salaries, but they're being called chiefs. So I've read the public defender budget. It's 40 pages long, single spaced. I read every word. There were no chief positions applied for. What Mr. Raju and whoever was helping him with this applied for were assistant chief positions. So, but they're being called chief, but they're not being paid chief salaries. I think this is disingenuous, and I think it's unfair. And what it also means, though, more for these women is they're not actually sharing power with the chief attorney, Matt Gonzalez. He still holds the ultimate power in the office. These women, as assistant chiefs, have to report to Matt Gonzalez.
Ms. Young, your time is up.
Thank you. As you can tell, I could go on and on. Sorry.
It's the nature of the work. So thank you so much for being here with us. Just so you know, we will be making endorsements on our membership meeting that's coming up on Wednesday, July 27th.
Right. And I have one question about that endorsement process.
Yes. And then before you go on, one of the last things that I'm going to ask you to do is to give a 1-minute closing statement. And so, again, Moises is keeping time and he's informing me as well how much time you have. So you have 1 minute if you can give us a closing statement.
Okay, thank you. Well, as you can tell, I mean, I am really passionate about public defender work. Public defender work is a calling, and not everyone can do it. And in order to be good at it, to be really good at it, you have to keep trying cases. This was Jeff Adachi's message to us year in and year out. You only get good at this by trying cases over and over again. And then when he saw the potential in you for leadership, he took you and he trained you to be a leader. Currently, that just has not happened, and it's just kind of become chaotic. So I really want to restore. This was the greatest public defender office in the country. Many of our surrounding counties are starting to express different opinions about that. During Jeff Adachi's tenure, I worked tirelessly alongside him to make this best public defender office in the country, and that's what I want to return us to. I don't think what's important is that the clients are getting served, the clients are not getting hurt, and that the people who are serving the clients are supported.
That's time.
Again, thank you so much.
Can I ask my question? Can I ask my question about the endorsement?
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So my question is, because Mr. Raju is a member of the DCCC and has already been endorsed by some individual members of the DCCC, is he actually a voting member of the endorsement for public defender? That's question 1. And question 2, when a sitting member of the DCCC is seeking the endorsement of the DCCC. Does the
Ms. Young?
DCCC ever, yeah,
Ms.
the
Young, I
last
think,
part. Mhm.
so I think we're just, actually, I made the mistake. We're just doing interviews, and I think we can address that question later on. But
Okay.
you raised some important questions, and I know that
Mhm.
Vice Chair LaCrosse has her hand up, and I will let her speak.
Okay.
Vice Chair LaCrosse?
Yeah, I was just going to respond to Rebecca's question, but I think also it's, if you would mind just like emailing us with those questions, we'll be able to respond
Okay.
back with the short answer is yes. Member Braju is a voting member of the Democratic County Central Committee, and so he
Right.
will be voting in the endorsements that we have before us.
Okay. So I would just ask that he abstain. And then I would also ask that the committee examine my qualifications and my background and interview whoever you want about my reputation, because I am equally, if not more qualified. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And normally, just to be fair to all the candidates, we ensure that during the time that you're being interviewed, that's when you actually, you're allotted time, that's when you can also ask those questions, because we want to be fair to all the other candidates. And so, but I think if anyone has any questions regarding the process of our endorsement, it's important to email. You can email our executive director, Moises Garcia. And Moises, if you can just, for the record, let us know what is the email that anyone, whether they're candidates or members of the public, can ask you or email you any questions. What is your email? And if you can also put it in chat so people
Sure,
can
just
see
put it in the
it.
chat. You can email info@sfdemocrats.org.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Moses. So I think, are we on time? We're actually pretty good on time, right? So we're going to be moving to the next candidates for interviews, and that is the candidate for assessor and recorder. And the first person that we have that's going to be joining us, oh, sorry. It's going to be Joaquin Torres. And Joaquin, good to see you this morning. Actually, candidate Torres, and I apologize. Thank you for joining us this morning. And just so I can review with you, you have 2 minutes to make a personal statement. And that personal statement could be why you're running for this position and why you're seeking our endorsement. After the 2 minutes, we will be opening it up for questions from the floor from the members of the DCCC. And then at the end, you will have a 1 minute statement, closure statement. And with that, we're going to go ahead and start. Moises, our executive director Garcia, he is going to be keeping track of time. When your time is up, he's going to let you know.
Okay, great. And then just to make sure you can all hear me okay, the sound level's good? Okay, perfect. Why don't I get started right now? Well, good morning, everyone. It's still morning. Thank you so much again to the San Francisco Democratic Party for having me here today. And I'm returning to you as a very proud former endorsee for my first race of assessor recorder, which took place earlier this year. And it has been a highlight for me to come before this body to hear your questions, to answer them, and ensure that we are receiving the best in government. I have been a longtime public servant through multiple mayoral administrations, and this is the first elected office that I've currently held, and I'm very, very excited to pursue a future full 4-year term in the general election this November. Really, the work is grounded in administrative excellence, ensuring that the stability and security of the resources San Francisco needs are present for us so that our decision makers can make sound investment choices, especially during these times. It's so important to have someone who has the experience of being a proven leader, leading an office like this, and building on the exceptional work that my predecessor, Carmen Chu, put into place, making sure that that 33% of the general fund that is supported through our work continues, making sure that no money is left on the table so that people are paying their fair share. And then also advancing government's ability to do more than its obligations. What I mean by that is advancing racial equity, both at the formal level and the informal level, so that together we can move administratively and culturally the conversation of realizing true racial equity, especially as it relates to wealth building and its cultural and economic impacts in our Black and Brown communities in particular. It's why I've started new estate plans that provide free estate plans for people in the southeast sector of our cities, focusing engagement and presence in Black and Brown communities to ensure monolingual Spanish-speaking families have access to this free or low-cost resource, that Black families, through engagement with churches, have the same experience. And I want to continue that work in these upcoming 4 years together with your support.
That's time.
Thank you so much. And now we are opening up for questions from members of the DCCC. If anyone has any questions for Mr. Torres. Member Berry, or Chair Berry, yes, I should say.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Welcome back, Mr. Torres.
Thank you.
My question for you is, when it comes to assessing properties at this time, especially commercial spaces, what impact has COVID-19 and shelter in place and the pressure a lot of businesses have had to stay open? What changes have you had to make, or adjustments rather, due to people having unique situations at this time?
So as part of the proactive work, especially for what the state law allows, again, we're administering all the rules and regulations as set forth by the Revenue and Taxation Code from the State Constitution of California. So we're limited in what discretion we have over reducing people's assessed values, but we do look at it. And very specifically, closely for condominiums, we're the only place during the pandemic 2 years ago where we were able to make proactive adjustments because the market was very clearly laying out that adjustments could be made there. So that was one of the first things I helped push forward to make sure that those property owners, as it was allowed, had some level of reduction, usually between about 7 to 10%, based on what the market was telling us. In terms of commercial properties, some of that was true as well for them. However, in this current year, we've seen the market rebound very quickly, both for condominiums and for commercial entities. I talk about commercial entities because I think it's very important for us, and a big task that we have ahead of us this year is a number of appeals that are coming before the Independent Assessment Appeals Board, where we are going to have to defend the valuations that we have. Why that's so important is because we want to ensure that every single dollar that we believe is correctly valued in the assessments that we've made, based on the information that we've received from commercial properties, that we're able to withstand any criticisms or arguments against our assessed valuation, so that we can keep those dollars, as we believe is our legal right to do so, from commercial entities, large commercial entities, so that they're continuing to pay their fair share. That's why I mentioned earlier that component of the $72 million that we've been able to collect through audit work in partnership with the Board of Equalization, so that when there's legal entity ownership transfers, in that regard on the commercial side, we're tracking them and doing our due diligence to make sure that we're collecting those dollars. The arguments that commercial entities will make, which is why the staffing and the work that we do is so important, especially right now, is because they're seeking to make arguments based on what people are reading in papers about how there's economic impacts that are affecting those properties. But the reality right now is that you're still seeing larger than ever sales in our communities for those large properties. And we want to make sure, as is allowed by law, that we are collecting the full value of them during this time. As it relates to small businesses, the connection is being connected to small businesses, letting them know how they can reach out to our office, making sure that they're coming to us and saying, I believe that I've been impacted in this way. And we say, please do share the information with us. It's onerous. I wish there was a more proactive way that we could do that. But for the business personal property side of small businesses, the level of engagement is really them coming to us with information that we can then review and share. And our team has been willing to do that and make those adjustments as it makes sense based on the value of that equipment. So we're keeping a very, very close eye on that. And that really does build into why the other element of the work is so important, around building familial wealth in our communities and making sure that they're aware of resources that they should be protecting and preserving for the benefit of our community stabilization efforts in San Francisco. So I know it's a lot, but it is a big, big issue that we're tracking and making sure that we're staying ahead of the dynamics so we can recoup those dollars so that decision makers can invest where we desperately need those resources.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to call member Lovett.
Thank you, Mr. Torres. So I have a question with regard to the accuracy of the building square footage data, understanding that the assessments are made on the parcel sizes, on the lots themselves. And that question comes really from understanding how community advocates are trying to look for revenue measures to put on the ballot that could be more progressive or equitable, so that if you've got, you know, these large, including residential buildings on small lot sizes, then is there a way to ensure some kind of equity and a way to do tiered taxes as opposed to taxing everybody with the same assessment that would generate revenue for a particular cost?
Yeah, no, I am very interested in that conversation around how we can be more specific. I think what I was disappointed to see happen in the 2020 November election was that the split roll effort to reframe the manner in which commercial properties would be assessed and therefore taxed, and the value that we will collect, that should and could have been different if that measure had passed. At the same time, you had an unequitable impact through the passage of Proposition 19 at the same time, when many people thought they were voting for providing flexibility for people to move more easily, which has been a benefit of that proposition and a good one, but it did impact people's ability from an equitable perspective to transfer their wealth through property more consistently. Under the auspices that there were certain families, wealthy white families in Southern California, that were taking advantage of the system. So I do believe we need to be particular about how to advance those efforts. How we do that still remains unclear in terms of the advocacy that is needed, the political investment that is needed, the economic investment needed to pass those ballot measures in future elections. You've seen in the East Bay through some of the spur conversations, specifically related to how we can look at the negative impacts and inequitable impacts of Proposition 13. We want to build on that work. And then secondarily, what conversations can we have with our university systems, UC Berkeley, Turner Center for Housing, and other institutions in the Bay Area around how we can develop very tiered and specific ballot measures that help us realize those equitable goals. Thank you, Moises. So I do think it's important as a very short answer, and I'm very interested in hearing where there's opportunities where we can share data to advance those efforts.
Thank you so much, Mr. Torres. We are going to allow you 1 minute to make a closing statement. And again, Moises will keep us on time.
Okay, great. Well, again, my name is Joaquin Torres, and I am the assessor recorder, elected assessor recorder here in San Francisco, in many parts due to the endorsement that I received from this body. I'm a proud, deep blue Democrat, and I am so honored to have that button on my website, and I want to have it again when I move forward for my full four-year term as your assessor recorder in San Francisco. I want to advance equity together with you, build financial wealth for our families, and ensure that we can be an open data resource to advance some of the equitable measures that we just discussed today. I think it's extremely important, if we want to realize equity, that government takes the ability and opportunity to do more to advance those goals. That's why I'm having conversations in the public to advance those conversations, to talk about what is the cultural impact of, say, racial discriminatory covenants that we are seeking to eliminate through the implementation of AB 1466, and making sure that we're reaching out into communities to deliver our resources to advance financial opportunities, specifically for communities of color, when quite often they have been left out. That's my purpose, that is my goal, and together with you, I want to advance those efforts, and I humbly ask for your endorsement.
Thank you so much. And again, we will be making endorsements on the 27th of July and hope to see you there as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Annabelle. And then again, what time is that on Wednesday, the 27th?
It starts at 6:30 p.m.
Great, perfect. Thank you.
So now we're going to be moving into doing interviews of candidates for the Board of Supervisors. And we are going to be starting in District 2 with, and the person that we're going to be interviewing is Supervisor Stephanie. And with that, good morning, Supervisor Stephanie. Welcome.
Good morning.
And thank you for joining us. Again, for this morning, for the interviews for the supervisors, just so you know, we have 2 minutes for an introduction, 7 minutes for questions and answers, and then at the end, it will be 1 minute for a closing statement. So with that, you go ahead and start and let us know your introduction, why you're running, and why you're seeking our endorsement. And yeah, so welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. And thank you for endorsing me back in 2018. It's an honor to have your support then, and I look forward to hopefully having your support again. I have been a proud lifelong Democrat who has fought for democratic values all my life. I believe in an economy that works for everyone, a right to health care, universal health care. I believe that equality and diversity is our strength. I will continue to work for our reproductive rights and a right to an abortion and contraception, LGBTQ plus equality, and of course, preserving same-sex marriage after the recent threats we've seen at the Supreme Court. And of course, a right to be free from gun violence, including police gun violence, which is something I've worked on over 2 decades now with many different gun violence prevention groups. I believe right now that Democrats, we must unite in a way like we never have before. We know that a major political party is trying to overthrow our democracy. Midterms are 108 days away. And in San Francisco, we may have our differences, but we all agree that on so much more than I think we disagree on. With regard to District 2, I've worked in District 2 for over 14 years, 9 years as an aide, 5 years as a supervisor now, and I'm really excited to be running unopposed. I think it says a lot about the faith that people have in me as their district supervisor. I will continue to focus on economic recovery of the small businesses in my district and San Francisco as a whole. I will be working, of course, on public safety and police reforms with collaboration between our communities, elected officials, and law enforcement, which I think everyone should be at the heart of that. And I do look forward to partnering with the party on gun violence prevention locally and at the state and federal level. It's one of the issues on the minds of voters, same with reproductive rights and Roe v. Wade and the overturning of that. I think we, again, must unite to make sure that we are providing recovery in San Francisco, support for our small businesses, and of course, protecting our LGBTQ plus communities. These are issues that I have worked on for a long time, will continue to work on, and hopefully with your support.
Thank you so much. With that, we're going to be moving on to questions from members of the DCCC. If you can raise your hand or write stack on chat, that'll be awesome. And I see member Chair Barry, her hand is up.
Thank you, Co-Chair Ibanez. Hi, Supervisor Stephanie.
Good morning.
My question is, about 4 years ago, I attended the District 2 debate when you ran for supervisor. And I remember the question being asked of, I believe it was 3 of you that were candidates at the time, if you would agree to a navigation center in District 2. And all 3 said yes, including yourself. And I'm wondering what has been the obstacles of getting that accomplished?
Well, I have said that I'm definitely open to a navigation center in District 2, and the obstacles are that no one has proposed one or looked at anything in terms of making that happen. And I was supportive of Supervisor Haney's idea, or now Assemblymember Haney, in terms of making sure that we are all doing our fair share. I continue to be supportive of the TAY housing in my district and the veterans housing at the Veterans Academy and the Presidio, but I think the obstacles are money, space, but again, it's something that I would definitely welcome in District 2.
Thank you so much, Member Barry. Anyone else has any questions for Supervisor Stephanie? Member, actually, Proxy Ochoa?
Yes, thank you. And hi, Supervisor Stephanie. Question for you is, after the redistricting process, how are you going to work to incorporate and include the new parts of District 2 into the community of District 2?
Thank you for that question. Very excited to have more constituents that are new constituents to District 2. And we have reached out to the NOPA community. I have reached out to those that are in Opera Plaza. We've gone south in District 2, and it's just getting to know them, having meetings and doing whatever we can to meet their needs, learning what their issues are in their communities and working well with them. I work quite well with all the neighborhood organizations, as they will attest to. And I welcome, new neighborhoods, new issues, and will continue to work on them as I have for the last 5 years.
Thank you so much. Anyone else has any other questions? If not, we are going to move along. And oh yes, sorry, Member LaCroix.
Yeah.
Or Vice
Hi,
President LaCroix.
Hi, Supervisor Stephanie.
Good morning.
Great to have you here with us. I just had a quick question. What would you say has been your biggest accomplishments over the past since we last had an endorsement interview with you? And what are some things that you would like to tackle moving forward?
Thank you for that question. And one of the things that I'm most proud about is we just passed Proposition D, which you endorsed. I'm very excited to be the first city in the nation to support a free right to civil counsel for domestic violence victims. Domestic violence is something that I care deeply about. I think that when we tackle domestic violence at that level as well, we benefit society in ways that are absolutely remarkable in terms of saving money, making sure that we are preventing trauma for children that are witness to domestic violence. So I'm very proud of Prop D passing. Again, thank you for your support. I'm also very proud that we were the first city to pass a ban on ghost guns. Obviously, you all know I've been focused on gun violence prevention for a very long time. And the reason why we did it in San Francisco is because we knew that other cities would follow. And it was also an attempt to make pressure on the state to do the same. And as you know, Governor Newsom just signed a bill doing just that. So I'm very proud of my stance on ghost guns, the fact that we've developed a gun violence restraining order program in San Francisco that's robust. And I just secured money in the budget to have another position in the city attorney's office. I'm using some of my own ad back money to make sure that that happens. So a continued focus on public safety, economic recovery, setting aside $20 million or waiving fees up to $20 million for our small businesses to recover. I love this job. I love public service. I love looking at different issues and figuring out ways to make things better. We've done a lot around corruption. We did the No Graft Act. We did legislation around qualifying pools in terms of response to the corruption that was going on at Public Works. We did legislation to reform the Behavioral Health Commission because, again, there was corruption there. So there's so much we've done. There's so much I'm looking forward to continue to do. And again, I'm proud to be a Democrat in San Francisco. I'm proud to work alongside of so many of you. And I look forward to doing it for another 4 years.
Thank you so much. Anyone else has any other questions? I don't see anyone on stack or anyone with their hands raised. With that, if you can actually do a closing statement, and again, you have 1 minute, and Executive Director.
I'm sorry, I think you're frozen, or is it me?
I think Annabelle froze, but you have 1 minute for a closing statement, Supervisor.
Oh, thank you. Well, first of all, I want to thank you again for your commitment to the Democratic Party, and thank you for your time this morning. I'm hoping we can continue to work together on so many issues that are facing not only our city, but our country as a whole. I'm very nervous about the state of what's happening at the federal level. And I think it's only through uniting together at the local level that we are going to be able to stave off some of the most threatening things I've ever seen happen in my lifetime. And I am, like I said, a proud member of the Democratic Party, have been for a very long time. I believe in public service, and it's something that I enjoy doing and committed to doing with democratic values at the core. So thank you for your time, and I would be humbled to have your support.
Thank you, Supervisor Stephanie. And again, 6:30 Wednesday night, we'll be doing the endorsement votes. So good luck, and thank you for having integrity, still run a campaign unopposed.
Thank you, Gloria.
You're
Have a
welcome.
good day.
You too.
Bye.
While we waiting for Ibanez to get her signal back, I'll be taking over as co-chair of this endorsement process. Next up, we have Supervisor Gordon Marr. He's running for District 4. And Mr. Marr, we have the process of supervisors giving 10 minutes, 2 minutes for your introduction, 7 minutes of questions, and 1 minute for a closing statement. You may begin when you're ready. Mr. Moises Garcia, our Executive Director, will be the timekeeper.
Thank you so much, Co-Chair Barry, and my DCCC colleagues and comrades, for this opportunity to speak to you about my re-election campaign and hopefully seek your endorsement. I really was honored to get the DCCC endorsement when I first ran 4 years ago, and at that time, you know, I campaigned on and was elected, you know, by a wide margin for District 4 voters to be a champion for our working families, our seniors, and our students, and to start to creating a new vision for District 4 in our city. And over the last three to 4 years in my first term, I followed through, you know, on the promises that I made, particularly to my constituents who elected me. I've been particularly proud of the work that I've done with Sunset residents in our communities to expand affordable housing in the Sunset District. Yeah, and so I've been a champion of our first two 100% affordable housing developments in the outer Sunset, one for educators and one for low-income families and formerly homeless families as well. And as you know, particularly the latter project, 2550 Irving, has been very contentious. You know, there's been a lot of pretty extreme opposition in the neighborhood to creating housing opportunities that for low-income families and formerly homeless families and more diverse folks from economically and racially in our community. But I've stood strong and really excited that both of these projects are moving forward. And then I also, you know, you may have heard sponsored legislation at the Board of Supervisors, which was just adopted this week, that gives veterans a preference or a new priority in all of our affordable housing programs. And that's going to be very important to preventing homelessness among veterans and increasing access to affordable housing, including our first two ever 100% affordable housing developments in the Sunset District. I've also, okay.
Okay, if any members have a question for Supervisor Marr, I see one, Member Lovett.
Hi, good morning, Mr. Marr. So we've seen an increase in attacks on members of the API community, and that really has tracked with, you know, the Trump presidency. And those continue to be issues, not just in the API community, but certainly it's a large constituency group in District 4. So sometimes it's gotten politicized. And how would you approach, or how have you approached public safety in a way that does not divide and pit communities against each other, but instead really addresses the root problems and causes behind hate crimes and oppressive acts?
Thank you for the question, Vice Chair Lovett. And I'm actually here right now at an important forum in Chinatown that is sponsored by Stop AAPI Hate. and also includes some congressional API leaders from the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus. And so this is the discussion that we're having here at this roundtable discussion with community leaders, diverse community leaders in San Francisco, is part of a process that we've been going through in our city, and I've been very actively engaged in to find real solutions and a real response to the surge and increase in hate and violence and discrimination targeting the API community over the last few years. And really, this is a result of all the racial, all the Trump era divisiveness and racial divisiveness particularly. So these have been a top priority for me as a supervisor representing a majority Asian American district, and also as a longtime Chinese and Asian American community activist and leader. We've been working on community-based solutions to these issues, including expanding. I've been actively involved in expanding services, victim services for our AAPI communities through the budget process and in partnership with community-based organizations and the Coalition for Community Safety and Justice. And then I've also been actively leading on community policing and community-based solutions, to that really prevent crime, whether it's hate crime or other crimes from happening in the first place, as an alternative to the simplistic and narrow focus on law enforcement and incarceration by many others. So I really believe that it's really the community and a strong community, strong communities that are going to create safety and justice, not just for the AAPI community, but for all communities.
Okay, do we have any other members with a question? If not, I have one for Supervisor Marr. See no other hands raised. Supervisor Marr, I saw that there was some issue with toxins on the project for Irving Street, and it brought to mind the toxins at the Hunters Point shipyard. And even though District 10 is not your district, you do vote on projects that happened over here in District 10. So when it comes to toxins, what type of urgency or what type of data collection do you use, and how will your district feel safe about the situation with that project?
Yeah, thank you, Co-Chair Barry, for that important question. I think you're referring to the toxic contamination that's been uncovered on the 2500 block of Irving Street. And I would say, first of all, that the only reason why the neighborhood and we're aware of the PCE contamination on this block is because of the affordable housing development, that's moving forward at 2550 Irving, because it was through that development that testing first happened and uncovered PCE contamination, not only on that site, but on a site across the street and possibly other sites on the block. So, so the neighbors, well, I've been fully supportive of the affordable housing development, despite some very vocal and strong opposition, in the neighborhood. I also very much support the neighbors in calling for a comprehensive and coordinated cleanup plan for the contamination there for multiple sources. So this has been a very frustrating process because this is the Department of Public Health and through the MAHER program that is supposed to be overseeing cleanup of toxic sites in our city, has deferred authority and oversight to this to the State Department of Toxic Substance Control, the state DTSC. So so I think the community's been very frustrated about the lack of accountability and communication about the DTSC oversight on what's now 5 separate oversight processes on this block. So, but I'm working with the community, and we sponsored a resolution that the board passed a few weeks ago, just calling on DTSC, to ensure a comprehensive and coordinated cleanup plan for the entire block that prioritizes community environmental health. And I think we don't have to pit affordable housing development, against community health and safety. We need both.
Thank you. And now you have, I believe, is that time up for questions, Moises?
No, there's still 250 remaining. So I'm pausing when members ask their questions to give candidates the full time to answer.
Okay, does any other member have a question for Supervisor Mar? Okay, no further questions. Supervisor Mar, you can give a 1-minute closing statement, and then we'll be completion of your interview.
Okay, thank you. Well, just to wrap up my opening statement, I focused a lot of my my work on expanding affordable housing in the Sunset District to ensure that working people and more diverse community members are able to live in our wonderful neighborhood out here. That has been one of my big priorities. But I've also followed through on what I campaigned on 4 years ago and received the DCCC endorsement around all the other important issues, improving our transportation system and expanding options for more sustainable modes of transportation, particularly on the West Side. I've been a big champion of City College and supporting our schools. Particularly, I've been leading the efforts to support college and career readiness programs in the high schools, and I've been able to sponsor about $7 to $8 million of city funding to support college and career readiness at the high schools over the last 2 years. And I've been working actively with my constituents on efforts to improve the quality of life in the Sunset, including starting up the Outer Sunset Farmers Market and Mercantile in the midst of the pandemic. That's become a beloved community event every Sunday, and also creating the Sunset Chinese Cultural District, which is the first ever. It's a city's 9th cultural heritage district, but the first one devoted to the Chinese community, and the first one on the West Side. So I look forward to continuing to all this important work in my second term, and would be very honored to have the DCCC endorsement in order to do that.
Well, thank you so much, and enjoy your day there in Chinatown.
Okay.
And see you Wednesday at the 6:30 meeting.
Yep.
At this time, I see co-chair Ibanez is back, and I'll switch it back to her. For members of the public, we are interviewing. We have completed the interviews for public defender, assessor, and District 2 supervisor. We're in the middle of District 4. Then we'll be doing 6, 8, and 10. So back to you, Member Ibanez, co-chair Ibanez.
Thank you, Co-Chair Barry. And the next candidate for District 4 is Mr. Joe Engardio. Thank you for joining us this now afternoon. And I'm going to repeat, just so you know, I think repetition is always really important. You have 2 minutes to make an introductory statement. Then you will open it up to questions from the members from the floor, and we will have 7 minutes. And at the end, you'll have a 1-minute closing statement. So with that, if you can tell us why you're seeking our endorsement and why you're running for DCCC. And our executive director, Garcia, will keep us on track. When it's time, he will let us know. So with that, go ahead and start.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Joel Engardio. I'm running for District 4 Supervisor, and I'm running because I believe that we can create our best San Francisco. And I know for a lot of people, it might feel frustrating living in San Francisco lately, but I'm not giving up. I have optimism. I believe that our city can realize its full potential. And the first step is just getting the basic functions of a city right. Safer streets, better schools, more middle-income housing, more affordable housing, vibrant small businesses, just the basic ingredients for a healthy city. Just focus on those and cooperate with each other and try to get those done. And I think we can really have a city that everyone's proud to live in, and a city that works. And I think that's what we all want. I'm a forward-thinking and practical Democrat. That means I'm going to embrace innovation and common sense solutions. I'm focused on results, and I'm running to represent the West Side neighborhoods of this. That would be like the Sunset, Parkside, Lakeshore, and that's in District 4. But I do want to represent all San Franciscans on citywide issues. I lead a group called Stop Crime SF, and we ran a campaign to stop anti-Asian hate and the attacks on Asian seniors. I support criminal justice reform, and for it to succeed, residents need to feel safe, and that and victims can't be ignored. I helped lead the school board recall. Our kids were suffering, so I stepped up to help organize a drive-through petition signing and to kind of jumpstart that campaign. I've worked as a journalist for 20 years, so I've reported on all the ongoings at City Hall, so I know the city's budget has doubled and nothing is twice as good. I know how to give residents a voice and hold officials accountable, and that's what I'll do in City Hall as a supervisor. So I'd love to have your support. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now we're going to open it up for questions from DCCC members. And with that, if you have any questions, please raise your hand, or you can also write your name on stack. And I see that Member Lovett has written stack, so Member Lovett.
Yes, hi, Mr. Engardio. So I asked this question previously, and we have seen a rise in attacks against members of the API community, and it's certainly gotten politicized, especially with the size of the constituency in District 4. So you mentioned the work that you have done. How would you approach it in a way, public safety and for all communities, in a way that does not pit communities against each other and tries to get at the root causes?
Yeah, I think it's very important that everybody feels safe, right? Like, we're all San Franciscans, we all have to work together. We can't, all the communities need to work together to kind of root out this hate. And so it's important to acknowledge like the victims and what they're feeling and give them the support they need. And also, look to, you talked about root causes. I mean, criminal justice reform is important. And there's also like larger societal issues that we have to address that can help alleviate crime in the first place. Education and housing and making sure people have all their needs met. So I think there's just a holistic approach that we need to take to deal with these issues, and while doing so, always like never ignoring the victims and always providing support to victims and making sure that they feel heard and that they know that we have their back.
Thank you so much, Vice Chair LaCroix, and then Member Co-Chair Barry.
Yeah, hi, Mr. Engardio. Thank you for coming before us today and seeking our endorsement. I have a question for you, and it's I've seen your name a few times running for supervisor in previous cycles. So I'm just wondering, apart from district lines having shifted, what is making your candidacy this time around different? How have you really reflected on things that critiques or areas of strength to really make this, like, how do you think you would be a supervisor differently if given the chance?
Yeah. So like I've lived in my house for 8 years, and the lines were redrawn, and thousands of my neighbors, we all moved together, so to speak, into District 4. But we're on the west side. We're west of 19th Avenue. I personally and my neighbors have spent a lot of time in District 4, and so I think what it boils down to is just the universal issues that people feel in San Francisco and on the west side and in the neighborhoods, a feeling of wanting a change in direction, wanting to make sure the city works, a focus on the basics, like schools and public safety and small businesses. And so none of that has changed. And I think people have been feeling these things for a few years now. And now is a good time as any to make sure we get the work done to make the city live up to its full potential. And so I'm happy to step up and represent all the people in my neighborhood and on the west side who want to see those changes.
Chair Barry.
Thank you, Co-Chair Ibanez. Mr. Engardio, you mentioned in your opening statement that you're for criminal justice reform. And as supervisor, you will be voting in police commissioners. You will also be voting on budgets having to do with the district attorney's office, the public defender's office, and the police budget. When it comes to reform, in criminal justice, a lot of people go straight to the victims and how they need to feel whole. But what do you recommend be done to reform the criminal justice system that has caused mass incarceration?
Yeah, like that, it's, you know, the war on drugs and locking up users and mass incarceration is failed and bad and has destroyed families. So we can't go back to the 1990s style version of criminal justice. So I think it's very important that we have a lot of programs where, in lieu of going to jail, you go into a diversion program. And those are very important. And I think we want to also make sure that the diversion programs are working and giving them the resources they need to be successful, and kind of measuring metrics for success, right? Making sure, right, diversion program A is doing really great, and so let's keep it going. And diversion program B has some issues, so let's go in there and see what's wrong and see how we might be able to fix it. Rather, like, I wouldn't want to just put everyone into a program and forget about it. I want to make sure the programs are working. So, right. And so I think that's key. Like the less number of people we lock up, the better. If we can divert people and make people, you know, productive members of society, and that's a good thing. And also, as I mentioned earlier, looking at the larger societal issue, you know, there are big issues we need to address so crime doesn't happen in the first place. And that goes down to education and housing and making sure people have the you know, the support that they need throughout childhood and as they become adults and members of society. So it's a lot of moving parts or pieces to that puzzle, so to speak. So I'm very interested in being proactive and, you know, contributing to making things better. I don't want to go back to failed policies. Absolutely not.
Proxy Ochoa.
Yes, thank you. I have a question. So as a graduate of San Francisco State, Sunset does serve as one of the hubs for students to live in, but increasingly we've seen it become more unaffordable as it's mainly single family homes. So what are you going to do as supervisor of D4 to support students to have affordable housing and build more affordable student housing specifically?
Yeah, I think more housing is really important for the future of our city. And I know it's controversial on the West Side and sometimes people resist housing, but I like to approach it to address the needs of the residents who already live here. So if you're a senior citizen, there might be two reasons you want more housing. When you realize that your adult children or grandkids have to leave the city and you can't see them as often, that's a good reason to build more housing so families can stay in the city. And also, as you age, maybe you don't want to take care of a big house or navigate the stairs, but you don't have any options to downsize or age safely in place in an elevator building in your neighborhood. And it would be great to provide those options. And we have a lot of transit corridors that could support 5-6 stories of housing that can do that. And within the single family neighborhoods or single family homes, you know, we could have fourplexes and small apartment buildings sprinkled in. It's not going to ruin any character of the city. And that's where we can have the student housing, right? The more that we build fourplexes and small apartment buildings, that's just more opportunity for students to stay here. And I think it's important, if someone goes SF State, we don't want them just to house them while they're in school. We want to get them invested in San Francisco and come here and contribute, and whatever they've learned, apply those skills to the city and build for the future, right? We don't want to just be a city of people who've already been here and they have their piece of the pie. We want to make sure a new generation can take us to new levels. So I'm excited about trying to work on these issues to make sure for the next 30, 40, and 50 years, like think down the road, what are we doing now to ensure the success of our city for the future?
Thank you so much. So anyone else has any other questions? If not, we're going to go ahead and ask you if you can make a closing statement, and you will have 1 minute.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm running for supervisor because I really believe that we can create our best San Francisco. And I knock on doors every day. I raced back from knocking on doors to do this meeting. I'll go back out again. And when someone opens the door, I always pose the question, what does the best San Francisco look like to you, right? And so this is something, it's not just me imposing an idea, it's about us, a community coming together and us like all buying in on an idea that San Francisco can be better, it can live to its fullest potential. And I think a supervisor with that platform and that, can bring people together so we can come up with solutions to our vexing problems and create our best San Francisco in a city that works. And I think we all have the talent, skill, and know how to do it. We just got to come together and cooperate. And I really believe that. So I'm really looking forward to a new spirit of cooperation with everybody.
Thank you so much for being here with us this afternoon. And just so you know, we will be doing endorsements on Wednesday, July 27th at our 6:30 p.m. meeting. Thank you once again.
Great. Okay, thanks. Bye.
The next person that we will be interviewing is going to be Liana Louie. I'm sorry, Liana Louie.
Oh, yes. Hi, how are you?
Hi, Liana. Hi, Miss Louie. How are you?
Hi,
Thank you for joining us here today, spending your afternoon with us. I'm Annabelle, and I'm Annabelle Ibanez, and I'm one of the co-chairs for the endorsement committee. My other co-chair is member Gloria Berry. The way this is going to work, you have 2 minutes to make a personal statement. Then we're going to open up for questions from the floor, and there will be 7 minutes for questions and answers. And just so you know, our executive director, Garcia, he is going to keep us on time. So when your time is up, he will let you know. The other thing, just so you know, when we're asking questions, he's going to stop the timer so we can ask the questions, and then he will give you the allotted time when you answer questions. And then at the end, like I said, you will have a 1 minute to make a closing statement. So with that, why don't you start us off by saying why you're interested in seeking our endorsement and why you're running?
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having me on. My name is Liana Louie, and I'm running for Supervisor District 4 to represent the underserved and voiceless people of Sunset. As many of you know, a large number of Sunset residents are monolingual, and none of the other candidates can speak Cantonese, Mandarin, or Toisanese, which are very prominent languages in Sunset. So not only am I representing them, but also the rest of the Sunset, which are composed of many other ethnicities, such as the Irish community, the African American community, and the Latino community, the Indian American community as well. And some of the things that I am most passionate about is public safety, particularly victim services, as well as criminal justice reform. The second thing I'm really interested in is sensible housing, addressing homelessness, and also the gentleman spoke earlier about housing for students in the nearby area, and for the people who graduate from San Francisco State that want to live close by to have more housing available. Repairing the roadways. There's lots of potholes on 19th Avenue. I don't know how often you drive there, but 19th, Taraval, Sunset Boulevard, my tires are deflated all the time, and I'm having to pump my tires every couple of weeks. So I want to make sure that the roadways are repaired. And yeah, the fourth thing that I'm interested in is supporting bilingual education as well as career programs. So not everybody who goes to high school want to be a scientist or a doctor or a lawyer. We need to have more programs available at all the schools. When I was going to high school, they had like mechanic shop, print shop, and all the other shops. So that, you know, people who want to have wonderful union jobs, good paying union jobs, can take those classes and then get into apprenticeships and get union jobs. And that's really important. I feel that we need to support the union. And then the final thing on my platform is to support small businesses, to make the process more streamlined and easy, and provide incentives. One of the things that I'm doing right now in San Francisco Chinatown is helping a lot of the small business remove graffiti. We have a weekly volunteer graffiti removal unit, and the merchants, they would give us donations, and we would volunteer to get. Thank you. Anybody have questions?
Thank you so much. We're going to open up for questions. And if you have any questions, please write your name on stack or raise your hand. And I see member Lovett and raised her hand. Member Lovett.
Good afternoon, Ms. Louie. So I have asked about public safety, as each of the candidates has talked about that as part of their platform. I'll ask a slightly different question. As I understand, you have done API public safety work as a citizen in Chinatown, and how is that different if you were to extend this to Sunset, where you did recently move to, right? So more focus on the Sunset, and how would that be different? What are the needs that you can identify with respect to that community?
Well, in Sunset, what I think really needs to happen is something we've done with United Peace Collaborative before, is that we need to connect with all the different people in each of the business corridors, as well as the residents. In order for public safety to really happen, it really requires collaboration from the people who live there, the people who work there, and the people who are already existing, that have existing programs, such as the city ambassadors, the SVIP team, SFPD. So we all need to work together in order to make it work very well.
Thank you so much, Member Proxy Ochoa.
Yes, thank you. So my question goes also back to public safety. As you know, Vision Zero is a goal that we've been struggling to achieve across the city. And I wanted to know what your ideas are to achieve Vision Zero, whether that includes supporting public transportation access throughout the Sunset, prioritizing uni, slow streets, and closing the Great Walk, hopefully the Great Walkway someday, but all of those issues.
Can you explain to me Vision Zero?
Yes, I guess the main point is to make sure that we have 0 deaths from traffic accidents, especially when it comes to pedestrian safety and walkability in the city.
Okay. So your question is how does closing the Great Highway and everything else pertain to that? Exactly?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
I'll restate my question.
Yeah.
So for public safety in San Francisco, what will you do to ensure that pedestrians are safe, bikers are safe, and people can move about the Sunset in a safe way?
Okay. Well, I think education is very important, right? It's very important. I'm a pedestrian most of the time, and once in a while I'll ride my bike. I don't do it very often, and I probably walk about as much as I drive. So it's about education. It's about balance. It's about respecting each other. So I really don't believe that closing the Great Highway is any better for the environment and for the people as it is. I myself, I am a U.S. Army veteran. I live in the Sunset, and my main thoroughfare to get to the VA hospital is through the Great Highway, and closing it actually causes problems for me. And I could only imagine for people who have chronic illness that need to use the VA hospital from this side of town, could possibly actually die on the way there because they can't get there fast enough. So, that is a major concern. I don't feel that closing the Great Highway helps at all. Is that in line with the zero vision? I mean, what if somebody died on the way there? That doesn't sound like it really fits in. As far as you had another part of that question? Did you have another part of that question in regards to Vision Zero?
No, that's okay. Co-Chair Barry can go.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. We're moving along. Co-Chair Barry?
Thank you, Co-Chair Ibanez. Ms. Louie, I ran into you several times in District 10, and you stated how many decades you lived here, so I guess you moved to 4. But my question is this: at a community meeting in District 10, you stated that Black people were evil, and you also, people in your group were yelling at babies and children, saying the streets aren't safe, and I'm just really concerned if this will be one of your tactics if you were to be supervisor of District 4.
I'm sorry, you must have a hearing problem. I never said that before ever in my life. I have lived in Bayview since I was 16 years old. My neighbors are all African Americans since I've been living there until recently when other minority groups have moved in there. That is, I'm sorry, that is a straight out lie. That's something that I would never ever say. Some of my best friends are African American. My boyfriend before my current fiance is a Black man, and his father is a Black pastor at the Kingdom Hall. I'm appalled that you would even insinuate that I would ever say something like that. My sister is married to a Black man, and they have half Black and Asian children. I'm appalled that you would ever say that you would even insinuate that I ever said anything like that, ever. This is absolutely horrible to even hear somebody ever insinuate something like that to me or my family members.
I'm done.
Thank you so much. If anyone else has any other questions, I'm going to ask everyone, especially our candidates, as well as our members in the audience, to be respectful of one another. Does anyone else have any other questions? If not, we're going to move along. We're going to ask you, Ms. Louie, to make a 1-minute statement, closing statement.
Thank you for having me here. I've been a San Francisco resident since 1979 for 43 years. In the first 5 years, we lived in San Francisco, Chinatown, and we were evicted out of our 2-bedroom, and we moved to Bayview, Hunters Point, and we've been there since the mid-1980s. And I recently moved to San Francisco Sunset because my son is going to Washington High School so that he could walk to school every day. I am running for office to stand for the voiceless people of Sunset. Many of us have been gaslighted and have been told that we don't matter. Well, I'm here to tell people that we do matter and our voice matters, and that's why I'm running for supervisor in Sunset.
Thank you so much for joining your afternoon with us. As I've been letting everyone know, we will be conducting endorsements on Wednesday, July 27th. That meeting starts at 6 p.m. You're welcome to join us at that meeting as well.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
You too. Take care.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye. So we're going to be moving along, and we're going to continue with endorsements. And now we're moving to District 6. And with that, we're going to be inviting Supervisor Dorsey.
Chair Ibanez, we're running about 10 minutes fast. And
Okay.
so Supervisor Dorsey is scheduled to show up at 12:45.
Okay, so do we want to take a little break, like a 5-minute break, and then stretch and then come back?
Sounds good.
So it's 12:35, so let's join back at 12:40. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Banyas, whenever you want to resume, our next candidate is in attendance. You're on mute.
Sure, I'm ready. I just want to make sure that we're all back. So, okay. Chair Barry is back. So we're going to go ahead and start. And we're going to continue with interviews for candidates for supervisor in District 6. And the first candidate that we are going to be interviewing is Supervisor Matt Dorsey. Is Supervisor Dorsey here? Oh, there you are. Thank you. Good. Thank you for spending your afternoon with us. Just walk you through the process. For the interviews, you have 2 minutes to make a personal statement. After your personal statement, we are going to open up the floor for questions from members of the DCCC, and we will have 7 minutes for questions and answers. Executive Director Garcia, when the question is being asked, he will stop the timer and then he will resume the timer. So you can have the full 7 minutes for your answers. After we're done with questions and answers, you will have an opportunity to make a closing statement. So with that, let us know why you're seeking our endorsement and why you're running for the supervisor for District 6.
Sure. So first, I just want to say thank you to all the good Democrats who are a member of this process and who are taking up your weekend to do this. Between 2012 and 2016, I was a member of the Democratic County Central Committee, and I remember this is a long day and a long process. And what you're doing is good for the party and good for our city and our state and country. And I really appreciate it as a Democrat, the service that you are rendering. It's only a little bit for me, but I know it's a heavy lift for all of you. So thank you for inviting me to take part in it. It was the convergence of a public health crisis in San Francisco and accidental drug overdose deaths and my own personal journey in recovery. I'm somebody who identifies as an addict and an alcoholic that caused me to ask Mayor London Breed to consider me as her appointee to the Board of Supervisors. I have been in and around San Francisco government and politics for a long time. I worked 20 years ago in the city attorney's office under Dennis Herrera. 10 years before that, I worked for Arlos, actually 12 years, I think, before that. My first job out of college was working for then District Attorney Arlo Smith when he was running for State Attorney General. And I worked on I managed his reelection campaign in 1991. So I've been around local government for a long time. But it was, for me, over the last couple of years, for people like me in recovery, as we were watching the city do a really outstanding job, in many ways a national leadership job at COVID-19. There is this public health crisis that's twice as deadly in drug overdose deaths. It's also something that open air drug scenes and drug dealing in my neighborhood has really reached a level of size, a preponderance of dealers, and a level of violence that we haven't seen in prior years. I appreciated the mayor's leadership during the Tenderloin Emergency Initiative, and I thought she could use better allies on this, and I asked her to consider me, and she appointed me. So I'm seeking your endorsement and seeking the voters to retain me as their supervisor.
Thank you so much. And with that, we're opening the floor for questions from members of the DCCC. Anyone in the DCCC? You can also write your name on stack. And I see that Member Lovett put her name on stack before Member Barry raised her hand. So after Member Lovett, Member Barry, you can go ahead, and then Proxy Ochoa.
I wanted to wait a beat since there might have been some folks who are closer to your district, although in our district on the west side, we understand some of these issues and intersections. They're very troubling. So my question is around that Tenderloin Emergency Initiative. Could you provide assessment work during those 3 months? What you would have changed, and how is the continuation of that work critical? Like what parts of it are truly serving, and also beyond the tenderloin, knowing that y'all has been.
That's a really important question. And one of the things that I will tell you, I hear a lot from the people in my neighborhood, when they hear, especially after redistricting, when they hear that there's going to be an issue, sort of a focus on enforcement in the Tenderloin, I think there's people in South of Market who immediately are going to be suspicious of what the city is doing, because they see, right or wrong, that this is going to be a problem that's going to be just moved around rather than solved. In my view, there is a strategy and a way that we can have a comprehensive drug market intervention and better treatment on demand, harm reduction approaches like supervised consumption facilities. I think we can expand things like sober living environments, drug treatment. I would say that this is something that other cities have done. There are studies that I could share, and I'm happy to talk about. But Lisbon, Amsterdam, Frankfurt, Germany, Zurich are all cities where they have relatively similar approaches that are fairly permissive and progressive on drug use, but they don't have the public health crises that we have here. I don't know if you saw a few months ago, I think Heather Knight did a story on New York City and what they were doing with supervised consumption facilities. I've supported supervised consumption facilities and harm reduction approaches going back when I was first on the DCCC. I think it's a natural extension of our needle exchange program that was begun in the Frank Jordan administration. And I think it's more important that we have it when we're talking about drugs as deadly as fentanyl. I think what we need, though, is to have a comprehensive strategy. And one of the things that distinguishes New York and European cities and Vancouver and other places where cities are doing a better job of addressing open air drug scenes and addressing this both as a public health and as a public safety issue is there's generally broader consensus around it. So I'm going to be working with the mayor and the district attorney and my colleagues on strategies that I think we can pursue to do this. But I will say, I think this is a city that did a great job of saving lives in COVID a generation ago. I think we were a city that showed the world how it was done in the San Francisco model and how we addressed HIV and AIDS. I think we can do that again with drug overdose deaths and some of the associated ills around drug dealing and open air drug scenes. But it's not solely public safety, but but public safety is part of it.
Okay, thank you. Co-Chair O'Bannon's had to step away for a minute. Go ahead, Proxy Ochoa, with your question.
Thank you, Co-Chair Berry. So thank you, Supervisor Dorsey, for being here. So as I'm sure you know, there was a very controversial redistricting process, and your district was kind of in the middle of that with District 5. And one of the outcomes of that was, sadly, the transgender district and a lot of the queer and trans communities were separated between 5 and 6. So if you're reelected, what would you be doing to help keep those communities together and supporting queer and trans activists and advocates throughout your districts?
Sure. This is a great question. It's interesting because one of the things, I had started the conversation with a couple people in the mayor's office before redistricting about that I would appreciate being considered, and here's why. And as I mentioned, a lot of this had to do with my own look. If I'm being honest, I think I never would have imagined that I would want to be a member of the Board of Supervisors until something that was really spoke to me, that felt like maybe I could contribute something as somebody who's from the substance use disorder recovery community. I will tell you, the rationale for that, I think, was stronger with Tenderloin and Soma together. Those are the two districts that are the ground zero for the vast majority of drug overdose deaths in the city. And I actually assumed when redistricting happened, I assumed that when Tenderloin and Soma were split, that I was no longer in consideration. I just figured that was, now, as a practical matter, Soma is still, Soma, sometime 2 months ago, there were more Soma residents than Tenderloin residents who lost their lives to drug overdoses. So it's still relevant. But I know as part of, as a member of the Mid-Market Neighbors Association, we were pushing to keep Tenderloin and Soma together. All that being said, what I have already said to my colleague, Dean Preston, is look, we may have some disagreements on things, but I am absolutely committed to being the best supervisor the Tenderloin never elected. And I have invited Dean Preston to be the best supervisor Soma never elected. We are elected from districts, but we serve the city, and the people who pay our salaries it's all taxpayers. So I want to make sure that we are addressing all the issues of the neighborhood. And I would say that's especially true for the transgender district. As a member of the LGBTQ+ community myself, it's, we are really in sobering times as a community, and I think especially the transgender community, which is just being vilified by the far right wing of this country. But I will tell you, this last, I don't need to tell anybody here that the court decision striking down Roe versus Wade put everything that we have accomplished over the last 20 years for the LGBTQ+ community, from marriage equality to the Bowers decision, the Lawrence v. Texas decision, everything that we have celebrated over the last 20 years back in the crosshairs. And Justice Thomas actually just said the quiet part out loud, that basically, if we're going to strike down Roe, now we've got to take a look at everything else, all the things that involve that are targeting the LGBTQ+ community. But I think really in the crosshairs is our transgender community. So that is something that I take very seriously, just generally, that we as supervisors have to serve the entire city. And I'm going to be very sensitive to doing everything I can to protect our transgender community as well, including the transgender district.
Annabelle, you're muted.
Sorry. I've done it over 100 times. Can't even remember, and I'm still continuing to myself. Member Barry, Chair Barry, you had your hand up.
I yield my time to Imran.
Perfect.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Gloria. Good to see you, Supervisor.
Yeah.
San Francisco has undertaken a very ambitious and impactful investments in public transportation. Whether it comes to the Van Ness bus lines, almost the completion of the Central Subway. I'm just wondering if you can lay out your vision of the future of San Francisco travel, especially when it comes to fighting climate change.
Sure. And it's interesting because this is one of the things that I'll tell you, there was a moment where we were in a transportation authority meeting, and it was this moment where I was like really appealing to my inner nerd about like Caltrain electrification and high-speed rail and the DTX. And it was sort of funny because it was like if there was a moment where I thought to myself, oh God, I hope I get to keep this job because I'm going to love this. It was a lot of stuff to do with transportation. So it does really appeal, as I mentioned, to my inner nerd. I represent a district where transit is going to be is hugely important. I mean, and I think that when we talk, especially the thing that over the next 8 years is going to be critical is the DTX, or the downtown extension. That's 1,500 jobs, but it's also fulfilling the promise of high-speed rail, whether or not that happens. But we just still have to, we have to fight for it. This is something where we have to work on transit and transportation issues. And I think that's especially true in District 6. This is stuff that we're doing that's going to be for the next generation. And I can't wait to get to work on it. Sorry, I don't have more time to sort of nerd out on that, but great question.
Thank you so much. With that, we are going to ask you to make a closing statement before we conclude our interview with you.
Okay, so I will just say it was interesting, like you probably, those of you who know me know that I have, a long history in city government, as I mentioned, going back 30 years. As I never really thought that I would be a member of the Board of Supervisors. And candidly, I never thought I would really want to. And as I mentioned, it was some personal reasons that led me to want to do it. But I'm really excited by the possibilities, not just for the things that moved my heart to want this job, but also for the things that San Francisco can do on transit and housing, equity, some of the things that we haven't even touched on, like our housing element, and some of the things that we can do for racial and social equity in the years to come. I'm incredibly excited to have the opportunity to work for this. I welcome the opportunity to be considered for this appointment. And with those of you who know me, I hope you know this. I will never hold it against anybody for not being with me. I'm going to be, as long as I'm a supervisor, I'm the supervisor who works with people who are for me and against me. No hard feelings. It's my job to serve all San Franciscans equally without fear or favor. I get politics is politics, but I'm going to do everything I can to be a great supervisor and a great public servant. So thanks for considering me.
Thank you so much. And again, thank you for joining us this afternoon. We are going to be doing endorsement. We're going to be voting for who we're going to be endorsing on July 27th at our next meeting. And we hope to see you there as well.
Okay. Thanks so much.
Yep.
Thank
you.
Bye.
And I just want to make sure that everyone knows that we have two more candidates to interview. Ms. Jackson, who's a candidate for D6, will be joining us later in the afternoon for her interview. But we have candidate Honey Mahogany, who's joining us here today. Thank you so much for being here with us. Just to walk you through the process, we have 2 minutes for you to make a personal statement, 7 minutes to answer questions from members of the DCCC, and then 1 minute to make a closing statement. Just so you know, when we ask the questions, Executive Director Garcia, he will stop the clock when we are asking the questions, and he will resume the clock when you answer. We want to make sure that your answers are the full 7 minutes. With that, if you can please tell us why you're running and why you're seeking our endorsement.
Well, thank you so much, co-chairs Ibanez and Barry. It's a pleasure to be here. And I am running for District 6 Supervisor because I care very deeply about San Francisco. I have a deep love for San Francisco because it has been a refuge to not just my community, but personally my family. My family came here from Ethiopia. They were both refugees. My mother actually primarily grew up in Mexico, and she met my father actually not in Ethiopia, but in Greece, where my father was studying for medical school there. But because of his activism, protesting the military coup and dictatorship that was taking over Ethiopia, he lost his citizenship. And while Europe rejected him, San Francisco was a place that welcomed him and my mother. My dad worked for 30 years as a taxi driver because none of his medical school credits would transfer. So he worked 30 years as a taxi driver to raise me and to provide support for my family. We grew up in the outer Sunset, and my parents ensured that we got the best education possible. And for them, that meant sending us to Catholic school. And I bring this up because I think it really informs, the person that I am today. My parents really showed us through example that it was really important to stand by your values, to stand up for what is right. And while I disagree with a lot of what the Catholic Church teaches, some things I really clung to, and that is the part about being of service to others and being the change you want to see in the world. That's why I became a social worker. I got my master's degree in social work from UC Berkeley, and I've worked as a social worker for 20 years here in this district. I started doing homeless outreach with Larkin Street Youth Services, have worked to bring people suffering with substance abuse disorder for the last 20 years into care and into treatment. This is the reason why I founded the Transcultural District and why I became a small business owner through the Stud Collective in the districts that I'm currently running in, because I love San Francisco, I love my community, and I care deeply, and I want to be a part of positive change. So that's why I'm running for the Board of Supervisors, and I would welcome the San Francisco Democratic Party's endorsement.
Thank you, candidate Mahogany. Now we're going to open it up for questions. If you can put your name on stack or raise your hand, and I will be calling you. And it looks like the first person that I will be calling is co-chair Barry.
Thank you, Co-Chair Ibanez. Thank you, Candidate Mahogany. My question is this. I've done a lot of research lately, and there's a direct correlation between homelessness and crime. And the more a person is placed in some type of housing, the less likely they are to commit another crime. So by you having so much experience at City Hall and having a front row seat to so many hearings and meetings, what do you see as a bold move to increase housing for those who were previously incarcerated?
Thank you for that thoughtful question. Yes, I have worked extensively on land use issues and also on homelessness, both as a social worker and as somebody in City Hall for the last 4 years working in District 6. I think that we absolutely can do anything we want to do here in San Francisco. We have the money, we just need the political will, and we need to actually be working in collaboration with each other and not fighting each other all the time. So I think that we absolutely could provide enough housing for everyone to get folks off the streets and into housing. I agree. Unless you have housing in a safe place, everything else is impossible. It's impossible to get a job. It's impossible to provide for your family. It's impossible to feel safe. It's impossible to receive treatment and care. So we absolutely need to do things like increase our mental health beds. We absolutely need to make sure that our shelter system is not only that we have enough beds there, but that the referral program works, that we are able to get people into those beds, that those beds and those SROs and all the different housing options that we have are up to standard so that people can be comfortable there. I mean, I have seen so many clients over the years refuse to go into SROs because they would rather sleep on the streets. So there's a lot that we can do to make sure that we are providing the type of housing that is appropriate and welcoming and safe for people so that they can get their lives together.
Thank you so much. And Member Lovett, and then Proxy Ochoa.
Good afternoon, Mahogany. So I will ask the question I had asked previously of the other District 6 candidate. So how would you assess the impact of the Tenderloin Emergency Initiative? So those 3 months, what do you think worked? What would have changed? Important to really continuing the parts that would work really for a community that's very complex in terms of the challenges that presents.
Absolutely. We were able to accomplish, I think, quite a lot through the Tenderloin Emergency Plan. It wasn't perfect, but I think it was a good start. I think, the sort of ad hoc or the overdose prevention site was something that we had been working towards as a city for a very long time, something that I've advocated for a very long time, last 20 years that I've been doing this type of work in San Francisco. I think that one of the boons of that was our ability to hire so many more people to provide these types of services, especially through the Department of Public Health, where we've had such a shortage of staffing, and it seems like an impossible task to be able to get people onboarded. Fundamentally, I think that system is broken. I think we need to make it much more easy, and we shouldn't have a state of emergency in order to staff up our city departments. And that is, I think, a key reason why we see this chaos in our streets, is that we have never actually staffed up our departments to meet the need. And we continue to fund a lot of the nonprofits we rely on to make up the slack from the city side. We don't do cost of living increases. We expect them to do more work for the same amount of money. And what does that lead to? Staff that is overwhelmed, staff that is oftentimes underqualified because we can't pay them enough to have qualified staff, and then people who are left unable to access services because the beds are constantly full. So I think the Tenderloin Emergency was a good start, but honestly, it was not enough. We needed a much more in-depth plan, a broader plan, a plan with more resources that didn't have just a neighborhood focus, but had both a district-wide and a city-wide effort that was coordinated.
Thank you so much. Proxy Ochoa.
Yes, thank you. Also love the color coordinated background.
Thank you.
Just realized. But my question is, young people oftentimes are not at the decision-making table in many aspects in our city. So I'm curious what you would do as supervisor to uplift young voices, especially marginalized youth.
Yeah, that's a great question. I really I have a history of doing this. Whenever I have entered a position of leadership, whether it was president of the Harvey Milk Democratic Club, whether it is as a chair of the San Francisco Democratic Party, or even as a chief of staff in Supervisor Haney's office, I have always made it my priority to make sure that I'm bringing people with me. Specifically in Supervisor Haney's office, I made sure that I was reaching out to organizations like TGIJP, the Transgender Gender Variant Intersex Justice Project, who works largely with formerly incarcerated trans women of color. I worked to make sure that they were receiving a stipend and also able to work as interns in our office to give them the experience and honestly be able to put on their resume that they worked as interns in City Hall. I was able to also provide direct mentorship to them, making sure that they knew everything from what was appropriate workwear to how to take good notes and just all the sort of like soft skills that they might need to be successful. So I don't think it's enough to just provide a seat at the table for people, but also to make sure that we have to make sure that we are empowering them and providing them with the tools that they need to succeed. And I have a history of doing that.
Thank you so much. Any other questions? I don't see anyone else. Oh,
One if
yes.
Okay, thank you. So I know when it comes to District 6 and SOMA, oftentimes the conversation is always about housing or the drug crisis, but I guess, is there another issue that maybe you see is not as discussed or not as talked about that is like an instrumental part of your campaign and why you wanted to be supervisor?
Sure. I mean, I think, yes, you're right. We talk a lot about homelessness, substance abuse and overdose deaths and housing, and those are really important and also related to many of the other issues. But one issue that I feel really passionately about, well, there's a couple, but one is small businesses. And again, I talk about this from direct experience as a small business owner in my district. Small businesses and the stud has closed, but we're trying to reopen. And one of the reasons why it's taken us this long is because it's impossible. There are so many restrictions. It is not a friendly process. It is highly convoluted. You need someone to sort of like guide you and walk you through it. People on their own, let alone, small businesses have historically been a place where people who are immigrants who maybe don't even speak English have been able to make a life for themselves here in San Francisco. And I just find it almost impossible, or, I can't imagine folks doing that, folks like my family doing that today. There's so much red tape and regulation, and that's one thing, but there isn't enough support to walk people through the process. There isn't enough language support. There isn't enough financial support. I think we should be incentivizing people to open small businesses, especially in places like SOMA, where we have so many storefront vacancies. Additionally, small businesses are heavily impacted by, things like the drug trade on the streets, things like, homeless encampments, and things of that nature. And I think that there are really humane, practical solutions that can be offered in order to deal with that. And I know as a small business owner, the stud has been really deep in compassion, having a compassionate response to things like homelessness and making sure we have Narcan on site and all of those things. And I think that cooperative models, community-centered models for small business are things that we should be supporting and moving forward into the future.
Thank you so much. Anyone else has any other questions? Seeing none, we're going to move along, and we're going to ask you if you can please make a closing statement. And with that, you have 1 minute.
Okay. Well, I'm running for the seat, as I said before, because I really love San Francisco and I care deeply about the city. And I also believe that bar none, I am the most qualified person for this job. I have experience as a resident, a small business owner, a social worker working in this district, and working in the district office as chief of staff. I have the most experience working on all the issues that are important to San Franciscans, and the things that people living in this district care about most. And on top of that, my election would show that San Francisco honors the work and the leadership of everyone from every community here in this city. So thank you again for your time, and I would really appreciate the endorsement of the San Francisco Democratic Party.
Thank you so much. And we will be seeing you on Wednesday, July 27th, where we will be doing our endorsements.
Thank you so much. Take care, everyone. See you soon.
See you. Okay, so we are moving along, and we are going to be conducting interviews in District 8. And Supervisor Mandelman is here with us. Good afternoon, Supervisor.
Sorry, just
You're
getting my
muted.
pronouns. Oops. Okay, there we go. Hi, everybody.
So thank you. Yes, thank you so much for being here with us, spending your afternoon. Just to ensure that you know how the interviews are going to be conducted. So you have 2 minutes to make a personal statement, 7 minutes for questions and answers, and then at the end you'll have 1 minute to make a closing statement. With that, let us know why you are seeking our endorsement, and yeah, tell us more about yourself.
Thanks, Annabelle, and thanks all of you for spending your whole day doing this and talking to all the candidates. So for me, being District 8 Supervisor for the last 4+ years has been the honor of my life. And, you know, one of the things that's great about it is being able to help people make more sense of city government when a bureaucracy is not responding in the way that it should. You know, we help so many folks just day to day make sense of City Hall and of the broader bureaucracy. I love being the booster for all of the good efforts that community folks are doing, whether it's for, you know, the school around the corner or the park around the corner or the unhoused person around the corner. There are so many people doing so many good things in this city. And those of us who get to work on the Board of Supervisors get to support those efforts. And that has been a tremendous honor as well. I have tried during this time to also make a difference on some of the larger issues. And I heard you talking about some of them in the District 6 context, but honestly, those issues are citywide. And so homelessness has been a very high priority for me long before I was on the Board of Supervisors, but certainly on the board. I worked with some of you to pass Proposition C back in 2018 to unlock $300 million of additional funding to respond to homelessness. I've also been a champion for a somewhat controversial notion that we really need to have shelter for any unhoused person willing to leave the streets and able to leave the streets. And we have now made that the policy of the City and County of San Francisco. We'll see how we implement that, but I think that was a step forward. Mental health and mental health, its relationship to homelessness, substance use disorder, those have been key priorities for me as well. And I have been one of the board's leading proponents of expanded conservatorship, which is also controversial, but I have also been one of the leading advocates for San Francisco to have more beds of all kinds, board and cares, locked, unlocked. We just don't have enough places for very sick people who need to be, not on the sidewalk and need to be getting higher levels of care. I got the mayor to convene and co-chaired a methamphetamine task force, and I'm out of time, so I can tell you the rest if you want to hear about it through questions.
Absolutely, we'll be asking questions. So the floor is open for questions from members of the DCCC. If you can raise your hand or write your name on stack, and I will call on you. And I see that member Barry has her hand up, or Chair Barry has her hand up.
Thank you, Co-Chair Ibanez. Hi, Supervisor Mandelman. My question is something that tends to divide a lot of us, whether we're named a progressive or a moderate, and it has to do with housing, or NIMBY or YIMBY. When it comes to building more market rate housing, that is often described as a solution to drive prices down. If there's more housing stock, then maybe prices will go down. What a lot don't know about me is I was a delivery driver for 5 years, and I've been in almost every building in San Francisco, and there's an abundance of vacancies. So how much more vacancies and new buildings should we build to get rent down to where people with low wages can afford them?
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a good question, because you can see how market economics tell you things are supposed to work, and then you see things don't always exactly work the way the textbooks say that they should. One thing that we can do as a Democratic County Committee is pass the vacancy tax that's going to be on the ballot this November, and I'm supporting that. I think most San Franciscans are not really exactly NIMBYs and not exactly YIMBYs. They're somewhere, in between. And I think that they recognize, and I believe that we need to build more affordable housing. And we also definitely need, certainly throughout California, and we're a part of California, more market rate supply. I think that's true. But that doesn't lead me to the conclusion that therefore we need to take away all the guardrails, take away any voice for community in the type of development that happens, and approve everything that is proposed. And I think it's somewhere in the middle that is where most San Franciscans want us to govern and where I've tried to govern. So for example, in my district, I've tried to constrain the development of monster homes. We have a huge concentration of homes for the gazillionaires, and we've done a great job of producing housing for gazillionaires in San Francisco. And frankly, I don't feel like we need a whole lot more of it. And so we've put some limits on that in District 8. You still can have a very large home in District 8, but maybe not the 6,000 square foot things that have been built. I proposed and have tried to get through the Board of Supervisors legislation to allow for modest upzoning in neighborhoods throughout San Francisco. We've had a lot of folks may have read about that. The mayor just vetoed it, unfortunately, in my view. There's a range of perspectives on the Board of Supervisors. Among my colleagues, I'm probably one of the more free market oriented who believes that we probably need to turn off more of the constraints. But I recognize that it's a hard conversation for a lot of folks. And so we at the board fought through our difficulties, put in a lot of protections against speculation, put in rent control as a requirement, and passed the thing out. We got 7 votes, and unfortunately, the mayor vetoed it. I think that we need to try to bring people together and come to consensus around responses, because the housing crisis is real. The state is demanding real plans to get 82,000 more units. And we need to try to do that. I don't think, unfortunately, the veto of that legislation suggested that we should just rely on the state for things like SB 9. I don't think turning over our local zoning authority to the state is the right thing. And I don't think they know how to add density in our neighborhoods in ways that are respectful of existing communities. But then we have to do it. And we have to figure out the ways that we can allow more development in San Francisco, more than we've had in the last 10 years. And we've had quite a bit in the last 10 years. But we need actually more market rate development. We need more affordable development. In my district, we've had the second highest rate of displacement. Long-term tenants are getting thrown out all the time. And so I've tried to focus some of my efforts on getting more affordable housing in my district. Historically, we had a lot of affordable housing, but that's legacy from 20, 30 years ago, and very little produced more recently. So I am proud. One thing I worked with that I did was happy to work with the mayor on was acquiring a parcel that's going to be a significant senior affordable housing development. I should stop. Sorry, Moises. Thank you for keeping me on track.
Thank you so much. And I know that Member Lovett, she's on stack, and after Member Lovett, we will be Vice President Lacrosse.
Good afternoon, Supervisor Mandelman. So my question is about the intersection of homelessness and mental health. Mm-hmm. And I know those are 2 issues that you've really worked a lot upon.
Yeah.
And what do you think we need to do to, create a channel that is compassionate, addresses the needs of all concerned, and takes the next step beyond what we have, because we have an innovative set of approaches, including the street crisis response teams. We have heard in our district here in District 4 that residents, community members have called, and those have not been effective in a number of cases. And so you think about all the public resources that go into it, but the intention makes sense. Yeah. So how are we not criminalizing things where people need treatment, people need help, and yet we're hearing, right? It's like, why do we continue to see these crises on the streets?
Mm-hmm. Well, I've been a strong advocate for alternatives to police as a response to mental illness on the streets. And that some of that was recommended by the methamphetamine task force. Some of it was mental health SF. We're now spending about $60 million in the coming budget on street crisis response and various efforts to engage with people that are not police. The trouble is, most of those interactions go down and are logged as resolving it not through transporting someone anywhere. Some people could say that's success. I actually think that's failure, because people need to be in a better place than the sidewalk. And some folks do need to go to a psych emergency room, and we are not taking people who do need to be in psych emergency to psych emergency now because psych emergency is backed up and the other emergency rooms are too backed up. We are not moving people in a timely way, or we are not keeping people who have been 5150'd as long as they should be held, because we're pushing them back out onto the street to clear the way for the next batch of people to come in. We're not sending people upstairs into the beds where they might get longer care and stabilize over a few weeks, because those beds are all clogged up. And those beds are all clogged up because we don't have the next places to send people: the board and cares, the locked subacute facilities, the not locked subacute facilities, all the places that people need to be. That's the problem. We don't have the places. We also don't really have the staffing for those places, but we don't, that's where we need to focus our efforts. And we can't do it alone as San Francisco. We need the help of the state and the federal government. San Francisco, I'm a big champion for more conservatorship. We do 11% of the conservatorships in California in San Francisco. We're 2% of the population. We're already doing more of the conservatorships than anyone else. We have Laguna Honda, where we're keeping more people in county than other counties try to do. And the crisis that is brewing at Laguna Honda is tremendously worrying to me, because it eliminates so much of our capacity. We need to be moving right now. The federal government, the state government have us moving in the direction of reducing our beds for folks who are very, very sick. I think we need to change our laws to make it easier to get care to people who don't recognize they need it, but it's not going to work or do any good at all if you don't have appropriate places for people to go. We put people who are too sick into permanent supportive housing and then wonder why they fail out and are back on the street. We don't have the right places. I think that's fundamentally the problem.
Thank you so much, Vice President LaCrosse.
Uh-oh, is it just me that's not
President
here?
LaCrosse?
Thanks. Yeah, so I just wanted to say, I wanted to bring the conversation back to housing for a quick second. Chair Barry had brought up just like the point of not having, there's so many vacancies in existing units and existing homes across the city. And I just wanted to know if you can speak to any or what efforts, if any, the members like yourself and members of the board have made with advocating for more housing choice vouchers for our county to the state and federal level as a means to, have people have more access to the existing housing stock and not just focusing on building, but utilizing what we have already here.
Well, we have to figure out some way to get those units unlocked. And I don't think it's just about another voucher program, although we certainly need the vouchers to be more, and we need people to accept the vouchers, and we need there to be legal representation for people who are trying to get their vouchers accepted and are having trouble doing that. I do think that Dean and Dean's folks have been are headed in the right direction around at least having some kind of consequence for hoarding property, that needs to be used for housing. And I also would certainly advocate for more vouchers. We do things like vouchers at the local level to try to increase the amounts that landlords are being paid, or make it possible for people even to afford affordable housing, because so-called affordable housing is not often affordable to people without an additional subsidy. But it's complicated. I still think we need more market rate, but I think the issue that you and Member Barry have been pointing out, which is we got a lot of market rate that's not being used, is a real thing, and people need to grapple with it.
Thank you so much. Proxy Emron, your hand is up and you're muted.
Yes, by mistake. Sorry about that.
That's okay. That's okay. Anyone else has any questions for Supervisor Mendelman, who's candidate for District 8? If there are no more questions, we're going to ask if you can actually lead us to your closing statement.
Okay.
And you have 1 minute.
Well, I want to thank you all, and I really would love to have the Democratic Party's endorsement. It goes without saying, but it is important to me, and I have been involved with the party for the last 20 years. I've been involved in neighborhood Democratic clubs, queer Democratic clubs, other Democratic clubs. I've served our city on Building Inspection Commission and Board of Appeals and lots of nonprofits. And in 2012, I was elected to the College Board and helped save City College from getting shut down, helped make it free. And I think I've done good work for District 8 and for San Francisco over the last 4 years on the board. I know I haven't agreed with everyone on here on every single thing, but I have tried to be an independent, pragmatic progressive who doesn't close the door on working with anyone, who tries to represent my constituents faithfully to what they want and need, and also what the city needs. And I think I bring a valuable perspective to our board, and I hope you'll all agree and send me back for another 4 years. So thanks.
Thank you so much. And we will be making a decision at our July meeting, actually coming this Wednesday, July 27th. Again, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you on Wednesday.
Okay, bye.
So with that, we now have Kate Stoya, and I hope I pronounce your last name correctly, who's also running for District 8 Supervisor. So Kate, I'm going to walk you through the process, or candidate Stoya, I should say that. I'm going to walk you through the process. So you have 2 minutes to make a personal statement. Then we're going to open it up to members of the DCCC to ask you questions, and you will have an opportunity to answer those questions. And then at the end, you will have 1 minute to make a closing statement. So basically 7 minutes for questions and answers. Just to repeat myself, Executive Director Garcia will, when we're asking you questions, he'll stop the clock. So you can have the actual full 7 minutes to answer the questions. And when you start answering the questions, he will resume the time. With that, take it on and let us know why you're running for D8 and why you're seeking our endorsement.
I will. Okay, thank you so much. Excuse me. My Wi-Fi has been a little weird today. If I lose you, I'm going to join back in on the phone. I was in and out on the phone. So whoever's the administrator of this meeting may be wondering why I'm dipping in and out. That's why it went off. It's on now. Hopefully it'll stay on. So I want to say, first of all, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to you guys this afternoon. My name is Kate Stoya. You can feel free to call me Kate. You don't need to call me candidate Stoya, but thank you. And I'd like to introduce myself to you guys and let you know who I am and why I'm running. I moved here to San Francisco in 1989, and I moved here because it was inexpensive. It was cheap, which is so hard for young people to imagine now that could be a reason to move to San Francisco. But I was living in New York at the time. I just graduated from college. I wanted to find someplace friendly and inexpensive where I could afford to work in a nonprofit. And my first job here was with the Stop AIDS Project, an AIDS education organization, where I worked for 2 years alongside such great San Francisco activists as Ken Jones, who we lost during the pandemic, but who was a longtime friend and mentor to me since 1990. I moved to District 8 in 1991, and I pretty much have never left. I've lived all over the district, in Noe, Glen Park, and the Castro. I was a renter for many years, and my husband and I bought our first house here in 1998. I went to law school at UC Berkeley, and I clerked for a federal judge for a year after that. Then I practiced law for the next 5 years, working as a litigator on a bunch of different kinds of cases, from employment to civil rights actions. In 1999, I helped represent a transgender woman who had been misgendered by the police and the sheriff's department and wrongfully strip searched by the San Francisco sheriff. After a federal jury trial, we won our case, and our client was awarded compensation and punitive damages. My husband, who is a contractor, and I also sold our first house, which we had lived in, or more accurately, camped out in, during our remodel. Over the years, we have remodeled 5 more properties, often adding units and turning them into beautiful and livable spaces. I am proud of the work we've done and the contributions that we've made to the city of San Francisco in the realm of housing. We have kept workers and, oh no, I always run too long. I've lived here since 1989. I've been an active community participant that entire time. I'm a parent, a lawyer. I just finished a public policy degree at UC Berkeley. I will take any questions you have.
Thank you so much. Yes, time flies.
Sorry, I know it really flies.
Okay. So
thank you though.
Yes, so we have 7 minutes, as I said, for questions and answers, and any DCCC who is interested in asking any questions, you can raise your hand or put your name on stack. And I see member Chair Barry, who has her hand up, who will lead us with the first question.
Thank you, Chair Ibanez. Hi, Kate. From reviewing your questionnaire, there was a question you left blank, and that is whether you supported or oppose expanding rent control. Why did you leave that blank? And then what are your thoughts on rent control?
I don't know why I left it blank. That sounds like it was an error on my part. I apologize. Do I support expanding rent control? I think rent control plays an important role in a city like San Francisco. But if you read and reviewed the rest of my questionnaire, and I don't know if you've had time to look at my website, probably not, but basically, and I've been listening in since you guys were on D6 here too. My feeling is that the thing that's going to really fix our housing crisis here in San Francisco is getting more housing built, getting more density and getting more housing built. And I know there's been some discussion on this call about the number of vacant units that are sitting in the city. It's possible that there are some vacant units. And I think the last number I saw that was accurate was about 4,000. I know there was a 40,000 number floating around, but when people dug into the real research on that it turned out to be way, way fewer than 40. I think we need to build more housing, and having experienced San Francisco both as an inexpensive place to live and a very, very expensive place to live after a massive influx of new San Franciscans, I can really see the difference from 32 years ago until now. So rent control, I think, is good and helpful. I think something else that could be expanded is kind of automatic offers of payout or setting a higher level of buying people out of their current living situations. Right now, something that happens with a lot of frequency is that a new owner of a building will, behind the scenes or kind of in an underhanded, sneaky way, offer to buy people out. That is often represented as, oh, I owed them money, and then they agreed to accept this amount of $50,000 in settlement of an old debt. It's all fake, basically, to like evade eviction law or to not evict somebody. We could set those much higher in San Francisco, and I think what we need, like, long story short, is to expand our housing supply. Rent control is an important part of it, but honestly, the academic studies on rent control are mixed. So in some places where rent control is expanded, what you see is actually less expansion of housing opportunities. It has a negative effect on the overall housing supply. What you're trying to do with rent control is maintain stability and offer low-income people a place to live. I grew up in a rent-controlled apartment in Cambridge, Mass, with a single parent. So I appreciated that, and it saved my family at a very, very difficult time in the 1970s when most people wouldn't rent to single women. So I understand the importance of it, but I think we also have to look at the academic research that says it doesn't always give you what you want, which is stability and more opportunities for people at lower incomes.
Anyone else has any other questions? Proxy Ochoa.
Yes, hi Kate, thank you for being here. So my question is, on your questionnaire as well, showed that you have never had elected office. But my question is this your first time running? And also, I guess, how is not being in elected office or being in a position like that shaping like your campaign and your candidacy to be on the Board of Supervisors?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. Thank you for asking. No, I have not held elected office before. As I said, and how is it shaping my campaign? I mean, I've followed San Francisco politics for a long time because my first job here was with Ken Jones and was at the Stop AIDS Project. There was a lot of political stuff happening around those issues at the time. So I have run this informal voting dinner every year for the past, 30 something years. Moving here from the East Coast and experiencing all the propositions on the ballot here was totally overwhelming. So friends and I started getting together to try to dig into the ballot propositions and the candidates and understand them. So we do that before every election. We have a dinner, it gets larger, it gets smaller, it depends who's here at the time. The way that deciding to run now is shaping my campaign and my view of the city is that things are not going well. I'm telling you about my voting dinners because I do follow San Francisco politics really closely. Many people, like I just came here, the reason my hair is still kind of wet, I can see on the camera, is because I just came from the pickleball courts, which I play at a lot over in McLaren Park. When I talk to people there about the fact that I'm running for supervisor, most people can't name their supervisor that I talk to. They're not sure what district they're in. And these can be long-term San Francisco residents, not just people who have just moved here. People don't follow San Francisco politics as closely as, kind of the small group of people that do. I think the city in general doesn't. What I will say is that people, myself included, are really frustrated with the way things are going, really frustrated with actually not being able to get help from city agencies, not being able to easily open a small business, not being able to easily, the most recent construction project that my husband and I worked on, we added a unit to a 3-unit Victorian in the Mission. So we now took it from 3 to 4. It was in a state of absolute disrepair when we bought it. I mean, the sewage was draining into the basement and they needed hazmat suits to clean it out. It was in neighborhood blight. Now it's beautiful. We restored the Victorian facade. We sold to all first-time homeowners. But I will tell you something, I would not do that again. I would not add a unit again under the current set of regulations and processes that we have here in the city. It was incredibly long, incredibly bureaucratic, incredibly expensive. And we wanted to do that to be able to add another small, like relatively affordable unit. I wouldn't do it. So I think I think people are frustrated. Small business people are frustrated. I have been looking at going into business with the guy who cuts my hair, actually. He wants to open his own little space. We are terrified of the regulations that have been widely publicized, thank you for the 1 minute, across the city of small business owners who, with the best of intentions, have tried to open up their little shop and have, found themselves $100,000, $200,000 in debt because the city drags its feet on permitting. So I think that there's a lot of room for improvement. I think a lot of San Franciscans can really relate to the fact that city government is actually not working for us. And that's really why I got into the race. I think San Francisco is seen as kind of a closed political loop. And I think many people across the city are feeling really frustrated with what that's yielding us.
Any other questions? And it looks like we may probably have like 30 seconds. If I do have a question, but I think that my question is probably going to take a lot more, but I'll ask it. And I know
I'll try to be fast.
But the question that I have, I know that you mentioned that there's some reports, academia reports that indicate that rent control is not working and it doesn't protect affordable housing, while I, on the other hand, have seen many reports that actually shows the opposite. And one of the things that I did not hear from you is solutions to ensure that we continue protecting affordable housing. And if you can, I guess in less than 30 seconds, provide us with some solutions to ensure that we can continue protecting real affordable housing. And when I mean real, that means that people that are not earning more than $120,000 a year here in San Francisco.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think it's really important. So rent control is a really important part of that. Below market rate apartments built as part of new housing developments is a part of that. Streamlining permitting in the city so that if you want to easily add a unit, which I know we just heard from Supervisor Mandelman, but I mean, the fourplex legislation that he was proposing was not incorrectly called a cheap lie by the San Francisco Chronicle because it, really substituted local control for the statewide mandate that those kinds of new units need to be, and that new density needs to be streamlined. I mean, I'm on the board of a theater group here in the city, and our founding director is a young, gay, Black man who grew up in public housing. Guess what? He's living on Church and Market in that new development because we were able to little by little get him up to a living wage to work as an artist here in the city. and he was finally able to afford, with help, to rent that apartment. So I also have seen that in action. And I think that is, we need people like that to stay here, but we also have to recognize that what we've been doing this whole time has made us the most childless city in the nation, right? During the pandemic, the largest number of people, or the demographic that left, were people between ages 20 and 34. We need those people. And affordable housing is a really important part of that.
Thank
Totally
you
agree.
so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking the time to answer my question. With that, can you lead us into your closing statement? And you have
Yes.
1 minute.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to you. It is an honor. In closing, I would like to say, basically just to reiterate what I just said, that many people, if not most, in San Francisco are not happy with the current state of political affairs. We have streets covered in garbage, which I, among many others, pick up every day when we go out for walks. We have a crisis of homelessness, drug addiction, and death, and a longstanding housing crisis, which has led to us being the most childless city in the country. The San Francisco Democratic Party's platform is that it represents voters who want to see fundamental change in our political system. And I agree with that. If you guys are among the people that feel like things are going in the right direction in the city, obviously your endorsement in this race is clear. If you join the majority of San Franciscans who think that we actually need a new direction, then I would appreciate your endorsement. And I thank you so much for your time, and sorry for running long.
Well, thank you so much. And as I mentioned before, and you heard me, we will be making endorsements on our meeting on July 20. That's Wednesday, July 27th. And again, you're welcome to join us at that meeting as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Next, we excuse me, we are going to be doing interviews of candidates in District 10. And I believe that's Supervisor Shimon Walton will be joining us.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes. Good afternoon, President Walton. Thank you so much for spending your afternoon here with us. I'm going to walk you through the process of the interviews. You will have 2 minutes to make a personal statement as to why you're running and why you're seeking our endorsement. Then you will have 7 minutes of questions and answers coming from the DCCC members. And then at the end, you will have a 1 minute, 1 minute to make a closing statement. When you're being, asked questions, our executive director, Garcia, will stop the clock to ensure that you get the full 7 minutes to answer your questions. And he will restart, he will resume the clock once you start once you start responding to the questions. With that, please let us know why you're seeking our endorsement and why you're running for District 10.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you so much. I want to thank the party for allowing me the opportunity to discuss my candidacy for re-election. I'm running for re-election because I want to continue fighting to make San Francisco more affordable, safer, and sustainable. As president of the Board of Supervisors representing District 10, I've always fought to make sure that all communities in San Francisco are supported and that the most vulnerable populations are not left behind, from addressing transportation inequities like stopping switchbacks, bringing the 15 back in the form of rapid service to downtown, and reactivating the 8AX and 8BX bus lines during the pandemic, to ensuring maximum affordability on housing developments, like at the power station, 100% affordable with homeless prenatal project on Potrail, and addressing safety with the comprehensive public safety plan like no other district, created with community, public defender's office, district attorney's office, SFPD, SVIP, SF Safe, and all stakeholders responsible for keeping our communities safe. We've also fought to address food insecurities and making sure that our communities have the resources and supports that they need, making sure that folks have rent relief and other support during the pandemic. I'm extremely proud of the fact that I negotiated the reopening of schools from distance learning, working with United Educators of San Francisco, school district administrators, and a mediator. And we continue to fight for homelessness here in District 10, having 3 navigation centers, an RV site, a vehicle triage center, and a safe sleeping site, all in my district. In 2018, we put out extensive policy platform, and we've been pushing policy and developing legislation that's in line with that program. I want to continue to build off of the work that we've been doing with the party and other city leaders in fighting for social justice and equity. And I want to make sure that we continue to support work for all of our communities like reparations, our work with the Latino Task Force, API Council, and Mega Black. We have much work to do here in the city and in District 10, and I want to continue to serve so that we can address those concerns and continue to be successful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So now we're going to ask members of the DCCC to ask questions, and they can raise their hands or they can put the name on stack. And I see Member Berry, who would ask the first question, then Proxy Emran will ask the second question. Member Berry.
Thank you, Co-Chair Ibanez. Hello, President Walton.
Good afternoon.
My question is this. It's an ongoing issue you know very well. It has to do with the Hunters Point shipyard. There was a hearing where our member Marie Harrison, before she passed away, got an award by former Supervisor Cohen in the chambers. And then Supervisor London Breed at the time, who was president, told Marie Harrison, we will get that shipyard cleaned up. Can you let us know what the status is?
Definitely, and asked a question about the shipyard because I was just on the phone with Ariane Harrison, Marie's daughter, earlier this morning, because working with her and Michelle Pierce on AB 617 to make sure we do everything we can to address air quality in the district. But right now, the Navy has given a timeline for cleanup on Parcel G. There were some things that have continued to halt cleanup. One of the major issues of late was going back and forth with the Navy about who's going to pay for demolition of all of the buildings on Parcel G. And that has been determined that the federal government will be able to pay for all of the buildings once Assemblymember Pelosi gets the bill through and the resources for the remaining resources for the demolition of the buildings. But from a timeline standpoint, there is some cleanup that has happened on Parcel G. We're supposed to have the cleanup complete within the next couple of years, but there's always been some kind of obstacle in the way. What I have done as a member of the Board of Supervisors is made sure that any building on Parcel A, even though they say no one lived there before, there wasn't any radioactivity there, now they must do soil testing before any additional building is taking place. So blocks 52, 54, and 56 all have to endorse soil testing before they're able to continue to build. We will be having a hearing on the civil grand jury report about sea level rise this coming fall after recess. And we're still trying to get a hold of the EPA, trying to get a hold of the Navy to make sure they can come and report and talk about their plans. But one of the biggest obstacles for us as a city and me as a supervisor is we don't control the Navy, we don't control the federal government. And quite frankly, the Department of Defense has been irresponsible in how they communicate with our community, how they connect with us. And we're really like trying to fight a giant, and we continue to do everything we can locally to address the concerns of our community. But most certainly, the Navy has not been helpful in getting what we need to take place.
Thank you so much. Proxy Emran, and after Proxy Emran, member, or actually Vice President Lovett will ask the next question.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to see you, President Walton.
You
mentioned this a little bit in your introductory remarks about, I wanted to focus my question on public education in San Francisco, more specifically what the city needs to do in collaboration with the SFUSD to close the achievement gap and improve math and reading proficiency, and just making sure that no school children, especially a Black and brown student, is left behind here in San Francisco.
Well, one, we need to make sure that every site is equitable. And what I mean by that, it's not just about making sure every site has the same level and amount of resources, but every site has the staffing and tools that are needed to address education issues and address education gaps. So if a site needs more literacy coaches on site for our educators, if a site needs more literacy programs on site for our students, we need to make sure that that happens. One of the things I am excited about is the Student Success Initiative that is going to go on the ballot that will provide funding for certain demographics in certain schools that have different gaps in achievement, because we know that all of our strong schools have a strong parent community or a strong parental group, and that's why they're able to thrive. So if we can make the playing field equitable and provide the resources in the schools that need more support and make sure that they get the things they need to be quality schools, that's a big piece of it. But we also have to have people who make decisions for our young people that care about all of our young people. We need people to understand that our school district is diverse. And so if you're going to be a leader that makes decisions for all of our children, you have to love all of our children. You have to love all of our families. And you can't have a thought process of children can't succeed regardless of what ethnicity or what race they are. And so we also have to start there. Strategies and creating equity and making sure resources get into the schools is one piece of it, but most certainly the right caring adults that make decisions for our young people is something that we have to change the gaps that exist in the district.
Thank you.
Vice President Lovett.
Hello, I'm Supervisor and President Walton. So how do you think you have championed the economic policies that really address some of the structural racism and the issues that affect so many people and really diverse groups in your district, but ones that have impacted the Black and Latinx communities greatly? And so what is that intersection and what are the best policies?
I think one of the first major things is fighting for maximum affordability, as I mentioned on a lot of our big projects like the power station, even prior to being elected on Pier 70. But we also have 100% affordable projects that we've approved that people don't talk about that much, like our homeless prenatal program housing that's going to go in Potrero Hill with the goal to make sure that single mothers who are struggling have an opportunity to have affordable housing here in San Francisco. Obviously, the $60 million a year that we carved out for the Dreamkeeper initiative to make an investment in the Black community to address mental health and wellness, home ownership, to address the issues with overcriminalization, to address small business opportunities is a big piece of the work. And during the pandemic early on, we knew that the federal government and the state were providing support for communities that were working in typical jobs, but most certainly our undocumented families and even members of our gig economy or domestic workers didn't receive any type of support from the federal government and the state. So our office worked with the mayor's office to provide family relief for families who didn't have typical types of employment, but most certainly were working prior to the pandemic and made sure that they received that family relief. And what that did was sustain the family unit during the pandemic and make sure that individuals who weren't receiving a source of income were able to receive that source of income during the pandemic. I think the biggest thing now, what we're fighting for is to make sure that we increase the taxes on e-commerce companies so that we can pay for universal basic income. We've seen UBI programs work in Stockton, and so I'm going to spend a lot of time these next couple of months fighting for that initiative, making sure that it passes so we can provide the basic needs and supports for the family unit while we work on programs like reparations and come up with more sustainable levels of income. If we're able to do everything that we've been fighting for and make sure that we see it through to the end in terms of family unit and particularly for isolated and disenfranchised community, we will see different successes and will create an opportunity for more families to be able to afford to live in San Francisco and thrive.
Thank you so much. I see Proxio Chair hands up.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, President Walton, for being here. One question I do have was related to a lot of the organizations like LTF, MNC, MNHC that really created a backbone of support for a lot of Black and brown families throughout the Bayview, and how a lot of the funding was disrupted earlier in the mayor's budget. And just throughout the budgeting process, what will you do to continue to support those nonprofit organizations, which really are a lot of the lifelines for resources and support for marginalized communities and low-income families?
Yeah, and it's unfortunate, when we first received the mayor's budget, that a lot of the services that those organizations provide in community were not funded. Obviously, serve on Budget and Appropriations Committee, along with Budget Chair Ronan and the rest of my colleagues, we fought to get that money reinstated and make sure that it was part of the budget for the next 2 years. And I will continue, of course, to advocate for that. But try to make sure that we work better with the executive branch to not go after services that are most needed in our communities. I mean, there's no way the budget should have come to us being cut, particularly because we're not even out of the pandemic. And I know we've come a long way, but most certainly we have much further to do. But I'm going to continue to advocate for the services that are provided for communities that need us the most. And hopefully, as we go through the course of the year and continue to work on policy, that we don't get a budget like that again that's willing to cut the safety net for a lot of our families.
Right. Anyone else has any other questions? If not, we're going to go and ask if you can please make a closing statement, and you have 1 minute.
Well, first of all, again, just want to thank you for the opportunity to address the party this afternoon. I really think that we're at a pivotal point in terms of making sure that we fulfill the promises that we've made, whether it's all the revitalization of our Hope SF projects that we have in San Francisco and our public housing communities in District 10, whether it's reparations and the promises that we've made to particular communities. We have a lot of work that we've been able to do together that we should be excited about, but most certainly we have a long way to go to continue to address social justice issues, to address equity, to address affordability. And I want to continue to work in that role because we have been successful in addressing those inequities that exist. And most certainly, if we have 4 more years and we're fortunate enough to be able to continue to serve, we can do a better job of addressing those needs and really putting policy in place that's going to last my time on the Board of Supervisors or even our time as we serve in these roles, because that's the most important to affect lasting change, is to put policies in place that will be here even when we're not in our same positions. So thank you for the opportunity to be here this afternoon. I really, of course, want the support of the party so we can continue to do the work together.
Thank you so much. And we will be making endorsements on Wednesday, July 27th at our 6:30 p.m. meeting. And hopefully we'll see you there too.
Thank you so much. I will be there.
Mm-hmm. The next person that we are going to be interviewing for District 10 is Brian Adam.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Brian, how are you? Thanks for joining us this afternoon. I'm gonna walk you through the process for the interview, and then so you have 2 minutes to make a personal statement, basically letting us know why you're running and why you're seeking our endorsement. Then after your 2-minute statement, you will have 7 minutes for answers, questions and answers. And then at the end, you'll have 1 minute to make a closing statement. During the question and answer period, our Executive Director, Moises, will be keeping track of time. Also, when we're asking you questions, he is gonna put the timer on pause, and then, for the questions to ask. And then once you start answering the questions, he will resume the clock. That way you will have the 7 full minutes. As I said, after the questions and answers, you will have a 1 minute to make a closing statement. And with that, tell us why you're seeking our endorsement and why you're running for District 10.
Sure, thank you. And thanks for allotting this time. I don't know if it appears over video. I'm a little frazzled. I just came back from a grassroots event and I saw that my time was moved up 15 minutes, but I'm here. I'm running for District 10 Supervisor as a new resident in San Francisco. The reason being, I think that there's an opportunity to have someone holding this office that is in tune to the diverse needs of a very diverse district, from Potrero Hill, Dogpatch to Viz Valley and Bayview Hunters Point. And we have a very diverse set of residents with a lot of different needs and a very different set of histories with the way that the city has treated them, history of services that provided, or the lack of services that have been provided. I currently work as a civil servant or an employee for the city and county of San Francisco. I've seen a little bit of the insides of the way that the city works, and I've also had the opportunity to work inside the private sector And I also had the opportunity to work as an intern for Assemblyman Evan Lowe, who represents different cities inside the South Bay in our state government. I think I bring a good mix of experience, and I think being in office, I would not only want to bring impactful policies that address racial equity, economic justice for our community, and promote growth and providing housing affordability, opportunity for people to start their own businesses or just to work in the community. But I hope that I'll be able to deliver on revitalizing or supporting grassroots organization. And for myself, really promoting public transit, regional policy on transit, and a regional policy on dealing with climate change and making San Francisco the city that leads on driving that Bay Area regional approach to addressing climate change. And I want the Central Community's endorsement because I think it's a weatherhead or bellwether for a driving policy and showing where the city is going and just letting residents know that I'm not out of nowhere.
Thank you so much. With that, we're going to open up for questions and answers. And anyone who has any questions for Mr. Adams, please raise your hand or write your name on stack. I see Member Berry raised her hand and Member Lovett is on stack. So we'll start with Member Berry.
Hi, Mr. Adam. Thank you for interviewing with us. I'm gonna try to simplify my question. I go to the Sunnydale projects a lot and talk to community, and the conversion of public housing to private housing, quote unquote, affordable housing, for some people in the community has not been a smooth process. They face a lot of different situations that they are not used to, and a lot of them feel that they are not being listened to and that the privatization is another method to move Black people out of San Francisco. What would you do to assure people that affordable housing, if you believe it is a good thing, are accommodated and that the process is more smoother? And more importantly, your follow-up game on once your units are bulldozed and they're moved, to keep them here in San Francisco.
Thank you for that question. I think the big thing, I had the opportunity to visit Sunnydale a couple of times, just a part of the work I do for the city. I know in my own department, we've been delivering or trying to deliver fast and affordable internet to the Sunnydale housing area and maintaining that clear set of communication. I think one big thing is if we're going to support affordable housing or affordable public housing, social housing, basically the city has to show up. And I think that that's making sure that the funding is available, that the policy is clear, that we're not going to basically move people out of public housing to clear the way. And I think that can come in a variety of ways. It means making sure that the housing that we want to have, the new secure housing we want to provide for people is already there, so that we have an opportunity to give people a chance to move into these places if they have better conditions, if they have better amenities, and we're providing better services to people inside our social housing developments. That may come in the form of, having that available, making sure that we have many units available to support them. It means continuing supportable housing funding, some of this in the form of rental vouchers. I think that the ultimate goal is to get people into full-time social housing so that we're not sending tax dollars to basically pay landlords. And I think for making sure that our residents are heard, I do realize that in a lot of different issues, there's opportunity for public comment, but those public comments kind of fall on deaf ears. So if elected, I would just want to bring another pair of watchful eyes to make sure that when we are listening to the community, that it isn't just for show, and that we are providing these services, or that when people raise concerns, whether it comes to reopening Caltrain stations, making improvements to roadways so that people are less likely to be hit by cars or feel safer as pedestrians or bikers. You know, I just want to be that person that's going to be watchful and making sure something is happening.
Thank you so much. Proxy Ochoa, your hand's up.
I think Lee was before me. On
I'm
stage?
sorry, your hand was up, and so I was calling to see if you have any question.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Brian, for being here. One question I have for you was similar to a question I asked another first-time runner for office, but I guess my question is, what involvement are you currently involved in right now politically, and how is, as someone who has not run for public office or has been in public office before, how is that influencing your candidacy and campaign?
Right now, I think as a recent transplanter in San Francisco, I have been trying to get involved in different grassroots organizations. I think one big thing to me is focused on public transit and affordable housing. I was just at a public transit event related to free muni for all. There was a similar pilot program brought forward by Supervisor Dean Preston last year that was vetoed by the mayor. I think the big process for me in running my campaign is learning about my community, learning about the history and the diverse needs of the community and interests of the community, making sure that if I were elected, that I'm not just representing my own interests or what I think are the interests of maybe like my neighborhood, Potrero Hill, but that I'll be able to capture what's going on in the city. I think for my campaign, I've just been focusing on, let me rephrase this. From my experience collecting signatures, I got a real impression that many people living in my district do not know who their representatives are. And that isn't to discount any of the work that the representatives are doing, but there's a disconnect between the community and the legislators we elect, or legislators we elect. So I want to have a campaign that stays grassroots and always stays connected to all parts of the community, so people know who they're electing and they know their track record. Not so I don't repeat this experience where I basically ask people, or I try to collect signatures, and many people don't know who's running, they don't know who's currently in office, and they don't know what they've done for that matter.
Thank you so much, and I apologize to Vice President Lovett. I skipped her when I called Proxy Ochoa. So Vice President Lovett.
Not a problem. So my question is about equity when it comes to regional transit and transportation, because the reality that you see is that a lot of working class folks are pushed out of the city and then they're commuting longer and longer distances, and just regional transit is part of the solution. But you know, people are in their cars as well for hours and hours. Sometimes they're coming from faraway places like Stockton. And part of this is addressing affordable housing. But what would you want to say about policies?
That's a great question. Thank you. I know from working in the East Bay for over 8 years before I came to the city, I knew a lot of people that lived in Tracy, Modesto, even farther in Manteca, Los Baños, and they were in all kinds of arrangements, making like super commutes into the East Bay or the South Bay, or living in temporary accommodations when they're working during the work week and then coming back home. I think that the big thing is that this kind of a thing is not something San Francisco can address on its own. It's something that it has to step up to the plate and basically add some teeth back into the Association of Bay Area Governments. You know, there has to be a way to drive transit-oriented affordable housing policy across the whole region, rather than making it a set of goals for different cities to meet. And then when it comes to the new buildings that they're making, most of them are at median income or well above, they're above moderate income. You know, we're delivering in all these respects, but not delivering and making things affordable. And when we make these new homes, they're not designed with transit in mind, so they just get linked up to our freeways, and people have their cars and they have to drive, you know, longer and longer commutes because jobs are concentrated inside the inner Bay Area, but cheaper housing is, you know, people are being pushed out into the exurbs of like the farther Bay Area. I think the big thing is holding our other Bay Area partners accountable to build that housing and to incorporate transit into it, and making it easier basically spread the businesses so that people don't have to make these, pilgrimage-like journeys into San Francisco, into the East Bay, just so they can survive in the Bay Area.
Any more questions for Mr. Adam? If no more questions, then we, if you can please do a closing statement.
Sure. I guess I just wanted to thank you all for your time again. I know for that last question, it was specifically asking for a particular policy or policy ideas. I think the big thing that I would like to bring, if elected and if endorsed by the committee, I just want to bring a grassroots focused perspective to be a legislator that will stay in touch with the community and deliver on bringing better public transit, a more holistic or regional approach to addressing issues of affordable housing and homelessness, and basically putting teeth into these regional organizations that do exist so they can actually hold our other Bay Area partners more accountable. Those would definitely be my top priorities if elected. And I know as a newcomer, it's a lot to gamble on a new person, but I think as a newcomer, I'm not synced up with a lot of the established interests. I have particular goals that I think align with the community and with the Bay Area at large. And that's why I hope to be elected and I hope to receive your endorsement. Thanks again for your time.
Thank you so much for being here with us. And feel free to join us at our endorsement meeting on Wednesday, July 27th at 6:30 p.m. And if you have any questions, please reach out to our Executive Director, Moises Garcia.
For sure. Thanks so much. Have a great day all.
Okay, so we're going to continue with the interviews for District 6. Joining us will be candidate Sherelle Jackson, and she is coming in. Good afternoon, Ms. Jackson. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I'm going to walk you through the process for the interviews. You have 2 minutes to tell us why you're running. It's a personal statement, why you're running, why you're seeking our endorsement. After that, we are going to open it up for questions from members of the DCCC. And for that, questions and answers, it's 7 minutes. During that time, Executive Director Moises will stop the clock when you're being asked, or actually we'll put it on pause. And when you're being asked a question, then he will resume the clock when you answer the question. So you can have a full 7 minutes. After that, we're going to ask you to make it for closure. We're going to ask you to make a closing statement. So with that, tell us why you're running.
Good afternoon. My name is Sherelle Jackson, and I'm running for Board of Supervisor District 6. I am committed and dedicated to public service. I continue to serve marginalized and underserved communities born here in the United States of America. Some of us are called to step forward, and that is me. I continue to serve seniors, workers with disabilities, veterans, and individuals experiencing homelessness. Right now, more than ever, we need a strong voice that is willing to uplift the voices of District 6 so that they feel empowered and not disenfranchised. San Franciscans deserve someone to uplift them and meet their needs where they are. Equally important is to have someone with boots on the ground and ready and willing to serve. I bring ample amount of experience as a member of SEIU 2-in-1, supporting it and workers' rights and labor's rights. I've served as the second secretary of COPE, co-chair of Workers with Disabilities, member of Women's Committee, AFRAM, and LGBTQ Lavender Committee. I breathe value into working alongside members of organizations for fighting against police brutality. I founded Black Voices and Allies Leadership Committee, became the Madam President to amplify Black Voices and Allies on many different social issues. I became known for taking a cohort from San Francisco to Washington, D.C. for fighting for social injustice. And I have since then continued to fight for social justice, ensuring that we are protecting voting rights, supporting small businesses, supporting women's rights, as right now we have lost them a few weeks ago. I'm building a foundation called Ladies of Grace to support women and supporting our BIPOC and LGBT communities. I am also the California Assembly District 17 ADEM, and I have served as Director of Communications for Justice, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, as well as the Vice Chair of Communications for Veterans Caucus and Program Chair of Veterans Caucus. In the tech world, I've developed an app called Mob, an owner of a small business project called Platinum Rose, author of 12 Sources of Income, executive producer of podcast Rose Milk, executive chief editor for Rose Milk Magazine to amplify the voices of women, politics and education, science and business technology. As an educator, I have taught youth from underserved and underrepresented communities, history, physics, English, and art. And I have also mentored youth in writing, and I am qualified to serve for District 6.
Thank you so much. So we are now opening for questions. Members, if you have any questions, please raise your hand or write your name on chat. And I see that Chair Barry raised her hand. So Chair Barry.
Thank you. I mean, Co-Chair Ibanez. Ms. Jackson, I was looking over your questionnaire, and you stated one of your priorities was to ensure that our marginalized and underserved communities are effectively uplifted with resources. Could you give a specific example and not a general example of what resources you think should be provided?
Absolutely. We have to tackle poverty in impoverished communities with resources that are available to them. This means making sure that we advocate and make sure that they have the skills they need to get uplifted and into jobs so that they have the opportunity to have ample opportunity for them to get into and qualify for roles that are higher paying roles so that they can be able to afford housing, be able to afford the needs that they need for food, and making sure that they're putting food on the table. We've got to ensure they have access to the kind of mental health and substance abuse resources that they need. We have to continue to make sure that there are fully funded programs that are giving the resources that they need in order to continue to suffice. It's about supporting them where they're at, but everybody has to understand that poverty affects people in many different ways, and to understand that, to take the time to understand the types of hardships that are out there, the types of people who are working class and middle class, and right now coming out of a pandemic, suffering right now in front of us. It's time to rebuild District 6 with resources they need in order to get to where they're going. It's about building families, breaking those barriers in which we get there for ourselves. But it's going to need all of us. It takes all of us. Because what we're doing right now is ensuring to be that voice to uplift them. And if we're not doing that, then we have to step to the side and make sure that somebody with a voice can get there. Because it's time to uplift them right where they're at. They need access to jobs, access to education, access to the skills that they need to get into the room. So that's where I stand.
Thank you so much. Anyone else? Anyone else has any other questions for Ms. Jackson? If not, oh, I'm sorry. Again, member Lovett, please ask your question.
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Jackson. So earlier I had asked about the Tenderloin Emergency Initiative that lasted for about 3 months to deal with the very real issues around fentanyl, drug overdoses, creating now a clinic. But maybe a different question is, how would you look at things in terms of going upstream to address these issues? You're talking about jobs, you're talking about education. I mean, when somebody comes or reports about what's wrong with San Francisco, they kind of look at what's visible. But what's invisible are the issues that have affected communities for many years and many generations. So how would you actually tackle things like jobs, mental health, education, and do that so that everything's not a crisis at some point to respond to in a way that could have been better prevented?
Absolutely. And this comes back to understanding the different needs that there are, because we've basically, what we've done right now is put everybody together in a pot and said, we're going to throw some money at it. We've got to break this down and understand that there are many different people in impoverished situations facing different hardships. It's about coming at this in multiple different ways. Some of us are able to have the education and resources, have the background and the skills in order to go and apply to jobs, but that's not the case for everyone. We have to understand there's some people dealing with mental health. There's some people dealing with substance abuse. And we've got to address that differently. We've got to be able to understand that some of these folks are having to do harm reduction methods, okay? So this means that we have to make sure that their funds are allocated to ensure that they have those resources. And of course, we've got to provide affordable housing. This is something that we have to continue to fight for. I see right now that we have to look at the population, look at the working class, see how many people are there in this district that are working class and members, people who are lower income. We've got to knock it down to a two-tier system that's going to break it down and make sure that they get to where they're going. Because some are going to need those mental health facilities. They're going to need those navigation centers. Okay. But also there's going to be some folks that are in there that's going to need those facilities that are geared towards substance abuse, rehabilitation resources. Okay. So we've got to do both. And we've got to be willing and ready to get the ground running on this. Definitely.
Thank you so much. Anyone else? Any other questions? Proxy Emron.
Yes, thank you, Chair Ibanez. Ms. Jackson, I wanted to talk about the gun violence epidemic we have in this country that's plaguing communities across, and especially the impact it has on young children who are dying, whether it be in these mass shootings or street violence. And what strategies and partnerships would you look for if elected supervisor to help curb this epidemic?
Right now, gun violence is at the forefront of all conversations that we need to have. Okay, when we're talking about our schools, when we're talking about community safety, when we're talking about making sure that people have the resources they need to protect themselves within those infrastructures, making sure that the teachers have the resources they need in order to train and ensure that they have the protections and knowledge to protect the students inside those schools. This is a critical conversation that we need to be having. You know, it's upsetting to me to hear moment after moment, month by month, people struggling, people hurting, people losing their families to gun violence. And to me, I think it's shameful, and we will move forward to ensure that we change it, to invest in protection, to invest in safety. And that's what we're going to do. And we're going to do it together.
Thank you so much. Anyone else have any questions? If not, we're going to ask you to lead us into your closing statement.
Thank you so much. I would like to start off with saying thank you for your time and support for giving me a second chance to speak today. It's with urgency that District 6 gets the resources it needs to uplift our community. We need someone that is dedicated and committed to serving families, housing the unhoused, supporting women's rights, BIPOC and LGBTQ rights. I know the importance of listening to residents in District 6. It's incredibly important that they have someone that's listening to their needs and ready to hit the ground running on behalf of their rights. That person is me. Together, we will get District 6 in order, and that's what we're going to do. My name is Cheryl Jackson, and I humbly ask you for your endorsement. Thank you for your time, and I wish you the best. Take care.
Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. We are going to be doing endorsements on Wednesday, July 27th at our regular meeting at 6:30 p.m. Hopefully you'll be there to join us at that meeting.
Thank you. Take care again.
Take care. With that, member co-chair Barry, you will lead us into a closing statement.
Thank you, Co-Chair Ibanez. I can't close without giving another shout and special thank you to our Executive Director, Moises Garcia, for guiding us through this process. The questionnaire process, which is behind the scenes, is pretty brutal, and we're getting it done without any assistance. So thank you so much, Moises, for helping us to look so professional. And I want to thank my co-chair, member Ibanez, and the members that showed up today, along with the proxies. And just so you know, Senator Feinstein's proxy is watching. And so thank you, Kathleen. for notifying us of that. Other than that, like Member Ibanez has said, our endorsement vote will be this Wednesday, July 27th at 6:30 p.m. The members of the public, please come. And other than that, thank you everyone and have a wonderful Saturday.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Have a good weekend.
Two.